Story 1. It all began subtly the day I moved into apartment 13. A humble unit in an aging building on the outskirts of the city. It came at a suspiciously affordable price. Eager for a new start, and undeterred by superstitions, I dismissed any second thoughts and settled into my new home. Initially, the nights were quiet, save for the occasional creak and groan of the time-worn structure. However, within a week, a strange phenomenon started to manifest itself. Soft whispers would seep through the walls as darkness fell, words muffled, but just perceptible enough to suggest human voices. Thinking little of it, I attributed the sounds to neighbors and thin walls. But as days turned into weeks, the whispers grew more distinct and more frequent. They started to echo through the apartment every night, forming coherent sentences, dripping with desperation and sorrow. I could no longer dismiss them as mere coincidences or tricks of the mind. The whispers began as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon and didn't cease until the first light of dawn streaked the sky. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I tried to trace the origins of these nocturnal murmurs. They seemed to emanate from a specific wall in the living room, a shared boundary with apartment 14, which had stood vacant since my arrival. The intensity of the whispers escalated, transforming into chilling screams that shattered the nightly silence. I lay awake, night after night, a frozen spectator to these horrifying screams, too terrified to move, too scared to sleep. My days became a haze of fatigue and dread. I couldn't concentrate at work. My thoughts constantly dragged back to the eerie occurrences in my apartment. Conversations with neighbors provided no solace. They either knew nothing or chose to remain silent, their eyes darting away whenever I mentioned the whispers. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing night. Shadows seemed to flicker in the periphery of my vision, disappearing when I turned to look directly at them. Cold spots appeared randomly throughout the apartment, sending shivers down my spine. Unable to endure another sleepless night, I decided to delve deeper into the history of apartment 13. A visit to the local library revealed old newspapers and property records, which told a grim tale. Decades ago, the apartment had been the scene of a gruesome crime. A young woman, the tenant of apartment 13, had vanished without a trace. Her disappearance remained a mystery, with rumors of foul play whispered among the locals. The reports suggested that her last days were spent in terror, claiming she felt an ominous presence and heard unexplained noises. Armed with this chilling information, I felt a renewed determination to understand what was happening. Was the spirit of the previous tenant reaching out from beyond, trapped within the walls of this cursed apartment? Or was I slowly descending into madness, my mind playing tricks on me under the stress of my discoveries? One particularly stormy night, the atmosphere in the apartment grew oppressively heavy. The air was charged with a palpable sense of dread. As thunder rumbled ominously outside, the screams reached a deafening crescendo. Driven to the brink, I shouted into the darkness, demanding to know what it wanted. In the eerie silence that followed, a vision materialized before me, a spectral figure, the apparition of a young woman, her expression tormented. She pointed towards the wall, her mouth moving in silent agony. Mustering every ounce of courage, I approached the spot she indicated. My hands trembling, I tapped along the surface until a hollow sound echoed back. Hidden beneath layers of old wallpaper and plaster, I discovered a sealed cavity. Inside, I found remnants of old possessions, photographs, a diary, a few personal trinkets, all belonging to the young woman who had vanished. Her diary was a window into her final days. It detailed her growing terror, her certainty that something malevolent lurked within her home. With the discovery of these items, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. The air felt lighter, the oppressive energy dissipating, as if a weight had been lifted. Over the next few days, the whispers and screams ceased, and the feeling of being watched vanished. I reported my findings to the authorities, who reopened the investigation into the young woman's disappearance. Though they could not conclusively solve the case, the act of uncovering her belongings seemed to have given her spirit some semblance of peace. As for me, I eventually moved out of apartment 13, seeking a new residence free from the shadows of the past. Yet, I often think back to those haunting nights, reminded of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the unresolved mysteries that can linger in the places we call home. Story 2. The abandoned asylum stood as a decrepit monument to a bygone era, its crumbling facade a testament to the passage of time and the horrors that once lurked within its walls. For years, it had sat dormant, a haunting reminder of the mental health practices of yesteryears. But curiosity often outweighs caution, and I found myself drawn to explore its depths, despite the warnings of locals and the chill that ran down my spine as I approached. As I stepped through the rusted gates, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The once pristine grounds were now overgrown with weeds, and the windows of the asylum stared out like empty eyes, devoid of life, yet filled with untold stories. With each creaking step, I ventured deeper into the darkness, the only sounds the echo of my own footsteps and the distant howl of the wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, and the musty scent of neglect assaulted my senses. I could feel the weight of the building pressing down on me, as if it were alive and breathing, suffocating me with its malevolent presence. But still, I pressed on, unable to resist the allure of the unknown. As I wandered through the corridors, shadows danced along the walls, playing tricks on my mind and heightening my sense of unease. Every so often I thought I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there but darkness. Then it happened. A cold hand brushed against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. I recoiled in horror, my heart pounding in my chest as I searched frantically for the source of the touch. But there was nothing to be seen, nothing but the empty halls stretching out before me like a labyrinth of nightmares. With each passing moment, the feeling of being watched grew stronger, a suffocating presence that seemed to envelop me from all sides. I could hear whispers in the darkness, faint and indistinct, yet filled with an otherworldly urgency that sent a chill down my spine. Despite my mounting fear, I pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity that refused to be quelled. But with each step, the asylum seemed to come alive around me, its long-forgotten inhabitants reaching out from the shadows with ghostly fingers, their silent screams echoing in my ears. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, I saw her. A figure standing at the end of the hallway, bathed in an ethereal light that seemed to emanate from within. Her eyes bore into mine, filled with a sadness so profound it threatened to consume me whole. I wanted to run, to flee from this place of horrors and never look back, but something held me rooted to the spot, a strange compulsion that defied reason and logic. Slowly, hesitantly, I took a step forward, drawn inexorably towards the figure at the end of the hall. As I drew closer, I could see her more clearly now, her features twisted in agony, her ghostly form flickering in and out of existence like a candle in the wind. She reached out to me, her hand trembling with longing, and I felt a strange sense of familiarity wash over me. And then, in an instant, she was gone, vanishing into thin air as if she had never been there at all. I was left alone in the darkness, my heart racing and my mind reeling with questions that had no answers. In the end, I fled from the asylum, haunted by the memories of what I had seen and felt within its walls. But try as I might, I could never escape the feeling that a part of me still lingered there, trapped forever in the embrace of the forgotten souls who called it home. Story 3. The night was dark, and the road stretched out before me like a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the barren landscape. I had been driving for hours, the only company the soft hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of my headlights illuminating the desolate highway. As I rounded a bend, I spotted a figure standing on the side of the road, their form hunched against the chill of the night. Ignoring the warnings that whispered in the back of my mind, I slowed to a stop and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" I called out, my voice sounding strangely hollow in the silence. The hitchhiker turned towards me, their face obscured by the shadows, and nodded silently. With a sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach, I unlocked the doors and watched as they climbed into the passenger seat beside me. At first, the journey was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the tires on the pavement. But as we drove on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something dark and sinister lurking just beneath the surface. And then, the hitchhiker began to speak. Their voice was low and gravelly, filled with a sense of sorrow that sent a shiver down my spine. They spoke of tragedies long past, of lives lost and promises broken, their words weaving a tapestry of despair that seemed to suffuse the very air around us. I tried to focus on the road ahead, to block out the haunting words that filled the car like a thick fog. But the hitchhiker's presence seemed to grow stronger with each passing mile, their gaze boring into me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. As the minutes turned into hours, I realized with a sinking feeling that I was trapped, that there was no escape from this spectral passenger beside me. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me whole, but still, I drove on, driven by a morbid curiosity that refused to be quelled. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, the hitchhiker turned to me, their eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. "You should never have stopped for me," they whispered, their voice filled with a quiet menace that froze the blood in my veins. In that moment, I knew the truth. The hitchhiker was not of this world, but a ghost trapped between the realms of the living and the dead, seeking vengeance for sins long past. I tried to scream, to flee from the car and escape this nightmare, but it was too late. With a sudden, violent jolt, the car swerved off the road and careened into the darkness beyond. And as the world spun around me, I knew that I was doomed, condemned to wander these lonely highways for all eternity, a phantom hitchhiker seeking revenge on those foolish enough to offer a ride to the damned. Story 4. The inheritance of the doll from my grandmother initially seemed like a sentimental gesture, a piece of family history to cherish and display. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent doll harbored a malevolent force, a curse that would unleash a series of inexplicable events upon my once peaceful home. At first, the disturbances were subtle, easily dismissed as tricks of the mind or the result of a drafty old house. Objects would shift from their usual places, footsteps echoed through empty rooms, and an eerie laughter seemed to linger in the air long after it should have faded away. But as the days passed, the occurrences grew more frequent and more unnerving. Doors would slam shut of their own accord, shadows danced along the walls with a life of their own, and I could swear I heard whispers emanating from the darkest corners of the house. Unable to ignore the mounting sense of dread that gripped me, I turned to the doll, the source of my newfound torment. It sat innocently on a shelf in the corner of the room, its painted eyes staring blankly ahead, oblivious to the chaos it had unleashed. Driven by a desperate need for answers, I began to delve into the doll's past, scouring old family records and speaking with relatives who might shed light on its origins. What I uncovered sent a chill down my spine and confirmed my worst fears. The doll was cursed, its creation steeped in dark magic and bound to a malevolent spirit with a thirst for revenge. My grandmother, it seemed, had been all too aware of the doll's sinister nature, but had chosen to keep its secrets hidden, perhaps hoping to spare future generations from the same fate. But her efforts had been in vain, for now I was bound to the cursed doll, its malevolent spirit feeding off my fear and growing stronger with each passing day. As I struggled to come to terms with the reality of my situation, the disturbances in my home only worsened. The laughter grew louder, the shadows more menacing, and I could feel the doll's presence looming over me like a dark cloud, its influence seeping into every aspect of my life. Desperate for a solution, I sought out experts in the occult, hoping against hope that they might know of a way to break the curse that bound me to the doll. But their answers were grim, their warnings dire. Once a soul was entwined with that of the cursed doll, there was no escape, no reprieve from the relentless torment that would follow. And so I found myself trapped in a nightmare of my own making, haunted by the chilling laughter that echoed through the halls and the cold, unyielding gaze of the doll that sat at the center of it all. I had inherited more than just a family heirloom. I had inherited a curse that would haunt me until the end of days, a curse that bound me to the malevolent spirit of the doll and ensured that my fate was sealed. Story 5. The shadow in the mirror was a presence that I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. Every time I glanced into the reflective surface, there it was, standing ominously behind me, its form obscured by darkness, but its intentions clear from the malevolent gleam in its eyes. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the light, or a figment of my imagination, but as the days went by, the shadow grew more pronounced, more menacing, until I could no longer ignore its chilling presence. It began innocently enough, a fleeting glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye as I passed by a mirror. At first I brushed it off as a trick of the light, a play of shadows cast by the dim glow of the room. But as time went on, the sightings became more frequent, more persistent, until it seemed as though the shadowy figure was always lurking just beyond my reflection, waiting for me to turn my gaze its way. Terrified and desperate for answers, I turned to anyone who might offer an explanation. Psychologists dismissed it as a manifestation of my subconscious fears, a projection of my inner demons onto the reflective surface of the mirror. Spiritualists spoke of malevolent spirits and dark entities that lurked in the shadows, feeding off the fear of the living. But none could offer a solution. None could provide relief from the relentless terror that gripped me every time I dared to look into a mirror. As the shadow grew stronger, so too did the sense of impending doom that accompanied its presence. I could feel it watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike, its eyes filled with malice and its intentions clear. No matter how many times I blinked or turned away, it remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the surface of reality. Desperate for a reprieve, I began to avoid mirrors altogether, covering them with sheets and blankets in a futile attempt to block out the shadow's gaze. But no matter how hard I tried to hide from it, it always found a way to creep back into my life, a silent sentinel of doom that haunted my every waking moment. In my search for answers, I stumbled upon ancient texts and forgotten legends that spoke of similar occurrences, of shadows that dwelled in mirrors and preyed upon the souls of the living. It was said that these shadows were harbingers of impending doom, omens of tragedy and misfortune that foretold the demise of those unfortunate enough to catch their gaze. Terrified by what I had uncovered, I sought out a renowned expert in the occult, hoping against hope that they might know of a way to banish the shadow once and for all. But their words only served to confirm my worst fears. The shadow in the mirror was not just a figment of my imagination, but a very real manifestation of a malevolent force that sought to claim my soul for its own. With no other options left, I resolved to confront the shadow head-on, to face my fears and challenge the darkness that had consumed my life. Armed with ancient rituals and forbidden knowledge, I stood before the mirror, my heart pounding in my chest and my hands trembling with fear. As I stared into the reflective surface, I could feel the shadow's presence looming behind me, its malevolent gaze boring into my very soul. But this time, I was ready. With a steady hand and a determined spirit, I began to chant the incantations that would banish the shadow from my life forever, calling upon powers far beyond my comprehension to aid me in my quest. And then, in a blinding flash of light, the shadow was gone, banished back to the darkness from whence it came. I stood before the mirror, breathless and trembling, but victorious in my triumph over the forces of evil that had plagued me for so long. But even as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow would one day return, lurking just beyond the surface of reality, waiting for the right moment to strike once more. For in a world filled with darkness, there are always shadows waiting to claim the unwary souls who dare to tread too close to the edge. Story 6. The woods were dense and foreboding, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers to grasp at the sky above. I had ventured into the forest in search of adventure, heedless of the warnings whispered by locals of the dangers that lurked within its depths. But as I wandered deeper into the wilderness, the sun sinking lower on the horizon, I began to realize that I had lost my way. Desperate to find my bearings, I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest as I pushed through the undergrowth. And then, just when I feared I would be lost forever, I stumbled upon an ancient cemetery, hidden away from prying eyes, its tombstones weathered and crumbling with age. At first, I was filled with a sense of awe at the discovery, the thrill of stumbling upon such a hidden gem in the heart of the forest. But as I stepped through the overgrown weeds and tangled vines that choked the pathways, a chill ran down my spine, and I felt as though 1,000 eyes were watching my every move. The air was heavy with the weight of centuries, and I could sense the lingering presence of the souls that lay buried beneath the earth. Some had been forgotten by time, their names worn away by the passage of years, while others stood as silent sentinels to a bygone era, their weathered faces bearing witness to the passage of time. As I made my way among the tombstones, I felt a growing sense of unease settle over me, a feeling that I was not alone in this forgotten corner of the world. And then, as if in response to my silent fears, I felt a presence, watching me from the shadows, its anger palpable in the air. I turned to flee, to escape the suffocating grip of the cemetery and the spirits that dwelled within its confines. But as I reached the edge of the clearing, a voice echoed through the darkness, cold and filled with fury. "Who dares disturb our rest?" it demanded, sending a shiver down my spine. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I turned to face the source of the voice. And there, among the tombstones, I saw them, the spirits of the forgotten dead, rising from their graves with a terrible purpose in their eyes. They spoke of injustices long past, of lives cut short and souls condemned to wander for eternity. They demanded justice for their forgotten souls, their voices rising to a chorus of anger and despair that echoed through the night. Terrified, I pleaded for mercy, for forgiveness for the trespass I had unwittingly committed. But the spirits would not be appeased, their anger burning like a wildfire in the darkness. And then, just when I feared that all hope was lost, a voice spoke out from the shadows, a voice filled with a quiet determination and a steely resolve. "We cannot change the past," it said, "but we can seek to right the wrongs that have been done." With those words, the spirits began to fade, their anger giving way to a sense of peace as they returned to their eternal rest. And as the last of them disappeared into the darkness, I knew that I had been given a second chance, a chance to honor the memories of those who had come before me, and to ensure that their forgotten souls would never be laid to rest again. Story 7. The sun was beginning its descent behind the thick canopy of trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor as I ventured deeper into the woods. What had started as a leisurely hike had turned into a maze of winding trails and dense undergrowth, and now as the light grew dimmer with each passing moment, I realized with a sinking feeling that I had lost my way. With each step, the silence of the forest seemed to grow heavier, pressing in on me from all sides like a suffocating blanket. The rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a bird were the only sounds that broke the stillness, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, just when I feared I would be lost forever, I stumbled upon it, an ancient cemetery hidden away among the trees, its weathered tombstones half hidden beneath a tangle of weeds and ivy. The sight sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed aside my unease and stepped cautiously into the clearing. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and I could feel the weight of centuries bearing down on me as I made my way among the tombstones. Some were weathered and worn, their inscriptions faded with age, while others stood tall and proud, their intricate carvings a testament to the craftsmanship of a bygone era. As I moved deeper into the cemetery, I felt a strange sensation wash over me, a prickling at the back of my neck that told me I was not alone. I glanced around nervously, but there was no one to be seen, no sign of life among the silent graves. And yet, I could feel it, a presence watching me from the shadows, its anger palpable in the air like a tangible force. I tried to shake off the feeling, to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild in the darkness. But deep down, I knew that something was terribly wrong. As I turned to leave, a voice echoed through the stillness, cold and filled with fury. "Who dares disturb our rest?" it demanded, sending a shiver down my spine. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I searched frantically for the source of the voice. And then, to my horror, I saw them, the spirits of the forgotten dead, rising from their graves with a terrible purpose in their eyes. They spoke of injustices long past, of lives cut short and souls condemned to wander for eternity. They demanded justice for their forgotten souls, their voices rising to a chorus of anger and despair that echoed through the night. Terrified, I tried to flee, to escape the suffocating grip of the cemetery and the spirits that dwelled within its confines. But no matter which way I turned, I found myself blocked by the angry specters, their eyes burning with a righteous fury that sent a chill down my spine. And then, just when I feared that all hope was lost, a voice spoke out from the darkness, a voice filled with a quiet determination and a steely resolve. "We cannot change the past," it said, "but we can seek to right the wrongs that have been done." With those words, the spirits began to fade, their anger giving way to a sense of peace as they returned to their eternal rest. And as the last of them disappeared into the darkness, I knew that I had been given a second chance, a chance to honor the memories of those who had come before me, and to ensure that their forgotten souls would never be laid to rest again. Story 8. Curiosity had always been my downfall, a relentless force that drove me to explore the unknown, to seek out mysteries hidden just beyond the edge of reason. So when I stumbled upon an old Ouija board tucked away in the back of a dusty closet, I couldn't resist the urge to experiment, to see if there was any truth to the tales of spirits and otherworldly entities that surrounded it. At first, it seemed like harmless fun, a chance to indulge in a bit of supernatural intrigue with friends on a lazy Saturday afternoon. We gathered around the Ouija board, our fingers hovering over the planchette, anticipation hanging heavy in the air as we waited for something, anything, to happen. And then it did. With a sudden, unexpected force, the planchette began to move, gliding smoothly across the surface of the board as if guided by an unseen hand. At first, we laughed nervously, attributing the movement to the subconscious impulses of one of our group. But as the messages spelled out by the planchette grew increasingly ominous, our laughter turned to unease, then to fear. The spirit we had summoned claimed to be a lost soul, trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead, seeking release from its earthly bonds. It spoke of unspeakable horrors and whispered secrets that sent shivers down our spines, revealing truths that we had never dared to acknowledge. Terrified, we tried to end the session, to banish the spirit back to whatever dark realm it had emerged from. But no matter how hard we tried, the planchette refused to obey, its movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. And then, just when we thought we could take no more, the atmosphere in the room shifted, growing heavy with a palpable sense of malevolence. The air seemed to crackle with dark energy, and I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized with dawning horror that we had invited something far more sinister into our midst. With a sudden, violent force, the planchette flew from the board, landing with a clatter on the floor as if thrown by an unseen hand. And then, in an instant, the room was plunged into darkness, the only sound the pounding of our hearts in our chests. We fled from the room, our minds reeling with fear and confusion, but the malevolent presence followed us, its icy grip tightening with each passing moment. Objects began to move of their own accord, strange noises echoed through the halls, and I could swear I saw shadows lurking in the corners of my vision, just out of reach. Desperate for answers, I sought out experts in the occult, hoping against hope that they might know of a way to banish the entity that had taken root in my home. But their words only served to confirm my worst fears once summoned. A malevolent spirit could not be easily cast out, its influence lingering like a stain on the fabric of reality. And so I found myself trapped in a nightmare of my own making, haunted by the dark forces that I had unwittingly unleashed. I tried to fight back, to reclaim control of my life from the malevolent entity that sought to destroy me, but it was no use. In the end, I was powerless against the darkness that had taken root in my home, a darkness that would haunt me until the end of days. Story 9. The idea of a weekend getaway in a remote cabin nestled deep within the woods sounded like the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. So, when my friends and I stumbled upon the listing for a cozy cabin tucked away in the wilderness, we jumped at the chance to book it for a few days of relaxation and adventure. As we made our way along the winding forest roads, the anticipation grew with each passing mile. The dense canopy overhead cast dappled shadows across the road, and the air was thick with the scent of pine and earth. It felt like we were stepping into another world, a world untouched by the chaos and noise of civilization. When we finally arrived at the cabin, it exceeded all our expectations. Nestled among towering trees and surrounded by the tranquil beauty of nature, it was the epitome of rustic charm. We eagerly unpacked our belongings and settled in, eager to explore our secluded surroundings. But as the sun began to set and darkness descended upon the forest, a sense of unease settled over us like a heavy blanket. It was as if the woods themselves had come alive with a strange energy, an energy that whispered of ancient secrets and hidden dangers lurking just beyond the edge of sight. That first night, as we sat around the crackling fire, swapping stories and sipping hot cocoa, we heard a soft rustling in the underbrush, the sound of something moving just beyond the glow of the firelight. We brushed it off as nothing more than the wind or a passing animal, but the feeling of being watched lingered long into the night. The next morning we awoke to a chilling sight, strange symbols etched into the walls of the cabin, their meaning unknown and their presence unsettling. We tried to laugh it off, attributing the markings to a prank or a figment of our imaginations, but deep down, we knew that something was not right. As the days passed, the atmosphere in the cabin grew increasingly tense, the sense of unease gnawing at the edges of our sanity. Each night we heard whispers outside our windows, the words indistinct but filled with a sense of malice that sent shivers down our spines. And each morning we found new signs of intrusion, claw marks marring the door, footprints in the soft earth outside, as if something or someone was watching our every move. Trapped in the cabin with no way to escape, we began to unravel, our nerves fraying with each passing moment. We argued and bickered, our once close-knit group now divided by fear and suspicion. And still, the whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent with each passing night. Desperate for answers, we ventured into the surrounding forest, hoping to uncover the source of the strange occurrences that plagued us. But the deeper we delved into the woods, the more it seemed as though the forest itself was alive, its ancient trees watching our every move with silent disdain. And then, just when we thought we could take no more, we stumbled upon it, a clearing hidden deep within the heart of the forest, its center dominated by a towering monolith carved with strange symbols identical to those that adorned the walls of the cabin. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that we had stumbled upon something far more sinister than we could have ever imagined. We were not alone in the woods. We were trespassers in a realm ruled by forces beyond our comprehension. As the whispers grew louder and the shadows closed in around us, I knew that our fate was sealed. Trapped in the cabin in the woods, with no way to escape and no hope of rescue, we were at the mercy of something ancient and malevolent, something that lurked in the shadows and waited for the perfect moment to strike. And as the darkness closed in around us, I knew that we would never leave the forest alive. Story 10. The flea market bustled with activity as I wandered among the stalls, my eyes scanning the array of trinkets and treasures laid out before me. Among the clutter of knickknacks and oddities, one item caught my attention: an antique painting, its ornate frame weathered with age and its canvas faded with time. Drawn to the painting's mysterious allure, I approached the stall and inquired about its price. The vendor, a weathered old man with a twinkle in his eye, smiled knowingly and named a surprisingly modest sum. Without hesitation, I handed over the money and claimed the painting as my own, eager to hang it in my home and uncover the secrets it held. But as I carried the painting home and hung it on the wall of my living room, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy shroud. The subject of the painting, a woman with dark, piercing eyes, seemed to follow me wherever I went, her gaze boring into my very soul with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. At first, I brushed off the feeling as nothing more than a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination. But as the days passed, the sense of unease only grew stronger, until it felt as though the painting itself was alive, with a malevolent presence that lurked just beneath the surface of the canvas. I began to notice strange occurrences around the house. Objects would go missing, only to reappear in unexpected places. Strange noises echoed through the halls at night, keeping me awake with fear and uncertainty, and a feeling of being watched seemed to permeate every room, as though unseen eyes were constantly upon me. Desperate for answers, I turned to experts in the occult, hoping against hope that they might know of a way to rid myself of the malevolent force that had taken root in my home. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and dark rituals that bound the souls of the living to the world of the dead. As the days turned into weeks, the painting seemed to come alive before my very eyes. The woman's expression twisted into a sinister grin, her eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent a chill down my spine. And then, one fateful night, as I lay awake in bed, I saw her move. Her hand reached out from the canvas, stretching towards me with a terrifying determination that froze me in place with fear. I tried to scream, to flee from the room and escape the clutches of the possessed painting, but it was no use. The woman's grip tightened around my throat, choking off my cries for help as she pulled me closer and closer to the canvas, her eyes ablaze with an otherworldly fire. In that moment, I knew the truth. The painting was not just a work of art, but a gateway to a realm of darkness and despair, a prison for the souls of the damned. And as I felt myself being pulled into its depths, I knew that I was doomed, condemned to spend eternity trapped within its cursed confines, a slave to the malevolent force that lurked within. But even as I surrendered to my fate, a small glimmer of hope remained. For I knew that somewhere, beyond the confines of the painting, there were those who still fought for my salvation, who refused to let the darkness claim me as its own. And as I slipped into the darkness, I clung to that hope with all my strength, praying that one day I would be free from the clutches of the possessed painting and the evil that dwelled within. Story 11. The music box had always held a strange allure for me, its delicate craftsmanship and haunting melody calling out to something deep within my soul. From the moment I first laid eyes on it, nestled among a collection of dusty relics in an antique shop, I knew that I had to have it, that it was meant to be mine. And so without hesitation, I purchased the music box and carried it home with me, eager to hear its enchanting melody fill the silence of my lonely apartment. But as the days passed and the nights grew longer, I began to realize that there was something more to the music box than met the eye, something dark and mysterious lurking just beneath the surface. It started innocently enough, with the music box playing its haunting melody at odd hours of the day and night. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than a mechanical glitch, a quirk of its antiquated design. But as the occurrences grew more frequent, I began to suspect that there was something else at play, something far more sinister than a simple malfunction. Each night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, the music box would come to life of its own accord, its haunting melody filling the room with an otherworldly presence that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore it, to drown out the sound with pillows and blankets, but no matter how hard I tried, the music seemed to seep into my very soul, its haunting notes echoing through the darkest corners of my mind. And then, one fateful night, as I lay awake in bed listening to the music box's eerie melody, I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the truth. The music was not just a song, but a summons, a call to arms for spirits from beyond the grave to come forth and torment me. Terrified, I tried to rid myself of the cursed music box, to banish it from my home and my life forever. But no matter how many times I tried to dispose of it, it always found its way back to me, as if drawn by some unseen force that refused to let me go. Desperate for answers, I turned to experts in the occult, hoping against hope that they might know of a way to break the curse that bound me to the music box. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient rituals and forbidden knowledge that lay beyond the realm of mortal understanding. And so, I found myself trapped in a nightmare of my own making, haunted by the cursed music box and the spirits that it summoned forth. Each night, as the haunting melody filled the air, I could feel their presence growing stronger, their malevolent energy suffusing every corner of my home with a darkness that threatened to consume me whole. As the days turned into weeks, I began to lose hope that I would ever be free from the curse of the music box, that I would ever find peace from the torment that had become my constant companion. But even in the darkest depths of despair, a small glimmer of hope remained, a flicker of light in the endless darkness that surrounded me. And so, with a resolve born of desperation, I vowed to fight back against the forces that sought to destroy me, to reclaim my home and my life from the curse that had taken root within its walls. For even in the face of unspeakable evil, there is always hope, always a chance for redemption for those brave enough to seek it. Story 12. The whispering woods stretched out before me like a labyrinth of ancient secrets, their dense foliage and towering trees obscuring the path ahead. With each step, the branches seemed to reach out to me, their skeletal fingers grasping at the air, as if trying to pull me deeper into their embrace. At first, I had ventured into the forest with a sense of adventure, eager to explore its hidden wonders and discover the mysteries that lay hidden within its depths. But as the hours passed and the sun began to sink below the horizon, I realized with a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that I was hopelessly lost, my footsteps echoing through the silent woods like a lone voice in the darkness. And then, just when I feared I would be lost forever, I heard it whispers, soft and insistent, drifting through the trees like a ghostly melody. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on my mind, but as the whispers grew louder and more urgent, I realized that there was something else at play. something far more sinister than a simple trick of nature. The shadows danced among the trees, their movements fluid and unnatural, as if they were alive with a malevolent energy that defied explanation. And as the whispers grew louder, I felt a chill run down my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end as the air grew thick with an oppressive sense of foreboding. Desperate to escape the creeping sense of dread that threatened to overwhelm me, I stumbled blindly through the undergrowth, each step leading me further into the heart of the whispering woods. But no matter how far I walked, the whispers seemed to follow me, their eerie call beckoning me ever deeper into the darkness. And then, just when I thought I could take no more, I stumbled upon it, an ancient altar, hidden away in a clearing deep within the forest. Its stone surface was weathered and worn, its edges softened by the passage of time, but there was something about it that sent a shiver down my spine, a feeling of ancient power that seemed to emanate from its very core. As I approached the altar, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy cloak, the whispers growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. And then, to my horror, I made a chilling discovery. Etched into the stone surface of the altar were symbols, ancient and incomprehensible, that spoke of a dark and bloody past. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The Whispering Woods were not just a place of mystery and wonder, but a realm of darkness and despair, haunted by the ghosts of the past and the malevolent forces that sought to claim the souls of the unwary. Desperate to escape the woods and the horrors that lurked within, I turned and fled, my heart pounding in my chest as I ran blindly through the undergrowth. The whispers followed me, their voices growing louder and more urgent with each passing moment, until it felt as though they were inside my very mind, driving me to the brink of madness. But even as I fled, I knew that I could never truly escape the Whispering Woods, that their dark influence would linger with me long after I had left their haunted confines. For in a world filled with darkness, there are always places where the shadows run deepest, where the whispers of the past echo through the ages, calling out to those foolish enough to heed their eerie call. Story 13. The carnival's mirror maze beckoned to me like a shimmering oasis in a desert of mundane attractions. Its facade gleamed in the flickering lights of the carnival, promising an adventure unlike any other. With a sense of eager anticipation, I stepped into the maze, the sound of laughter and excitement fading behind me as I ventured into its twisting corridors. At first, the maze seemed like harmless fun, its mirrored walls reflecting my image back at me from every angle. I laughed as I watched my reflection stretch and distort, my features morphing into exaggerated caricatures of themselves as I navigated the maze's labyrinthine passages. But as I delved deeper into the maze, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy shroud. The reflections that had once seemed amusing now took on a sinister edge, their mocking laughter echoing through the corridors as I struggled to find my way out. With each turn, the maze seemed to shift and change before my eyes, its mirrored walls bending and twisting in ways that defied logic and reason. I tried to keep my bearings, to follow the path that would lead me to freedom, but the maze seemed determined to confound me at every turn. As the minutes turned into hours, I began to feel a creeping sense of dread settle over me like a fog, obscuring my thoughts and clouding my judgment. The reflections that mocked me from every angle seemed to grow more menacing with each passing moment, their twisted smiles and mocking gestures filling me with a sense of primal fear. Desperate to escape the maze's clutches, I tried to retrace my steps, to find my way back to the entrance before it was too late. But the mirrored walls seemed to stretch out endlessly before me, their reflections taunting me with their endless repetition. And then, just when I thought I could take no more, I stumbled upon it a dead end, a cul-de-sac of glass that offered no escape. I pounded on the mirrored walls in frustration, my cries for help lost in the maze's endless corridors. Trapped in the labyrinth of glass, I felt a growing sense of panic grip me like a vice, squeezing the air from my lungs and clouding my thoughts with a sense of impending doom. The maze seemed to close in around me, its mirrored walls pressing in from all sides as if eager to claim me as their own. But even in the depths of despair, a small glimmer of hope remained. For I knew that somewhere, deep within the maze's twisting corridors, there must be a way out, a path that would lead me back to the world outside. With renewed determination, I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest as I navigated the maze's endless twists and turns. Each step brought me closer to freedom, each turn of the corner a small victory in the battle against the maze's sinister influence. And then, just when I feared that all hope was lost, I saw a faint glimmer of light shining through a gap in the mirrored walls. With a surge of adrenaline, I raced towards it, my footsteps echoing through the corridors as I ran with all the strength I had left. And then, with a final burst of effort, I burst through the maze's exit, blinking in the sudden brightness of the carnival lights as I emerged into the open air. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath as I basked in the sweet relief of freedom. As I looked back at the mirror maze, now nothing more than a distant memory, I knew that I had faced my fears and emerged victorious. For even in the darkest depths of the maze, there is always a glimmer of hope, always a path that leads back to the light. And as I walked away from the carnival, the echoes of my ordeal fading into the night, I knew that I would never forget the terror of the mirror maze, nor the strength and courage it took to escape its clutches. Story 14. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desolate harbor, I stood before the imposing silhouette of the abandoned ship. Its once majestic sails hung limp, tattered by the relentless winds that swept through the harbor. The rumors of treasure hidden within its depths had lured me here, but now, as I gazed up at the darkened hull, a sense of unease crept over me. Ignoring the chill that prickled at the back of my neck, I stepped onto the creaking gangplank, the wood groaning under my weight. The scent of salt and decay filled the air, mingling with the faint whispers of the sea. With each step, I felt a growing sense of foreboding, as if the very ship itself was alive, watching my every move. Entering the belly of the vessel, I found myself in a labyrinth of narrow corridors and dimly lit chambers. Shadows danced along the walls, their movements seemingly guided by an unseen hand. I pressed on, driven by the promise of untold riches that lay hidden somewhere within the ship's bowels. As I delved deeper into the heart of the vessel, the air grew thick with the scent of seaweed and brine. Strange symbols adorned the walls, their meaning lost to time. It was then that I first heard them, the faint whispers that echoed through the darkness, like the mournful cries of lost souls. At first, I dismissed them as mere figments of my imagination, the product of an overactive mind in the grip of fear. But as I ventured further into the ship, the whispers grew louder, their words taking shape in my mind. They spoke of betrayal and tragedy, of a crew lost at sea and a captain driven mad by greed. With each passing moment, the ship seemed to come alive around me, its timbers groaning and shifting as if possessed by some unseen force. Shadows flitted past me, their forms indistinct and ephemeral. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that gripped me, but it clung to me like a shroud, weighing me down with each step. I stumbled upon the ship's cargo hold, the air heavy with the scent of rust and decay. It was there that I found it, the object of my quest, hidden amidst a mound of rotting crates and barrels. But as I reached out to claim my prize, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the flickering lanterns that illuminated the room. In the darkness, I felt a presence looming over me, its malevolent gaze piercing through the veil of shadows. And then they appeared, the restless spirits of the crew, their faces twisted in anguish, their eyes burning with an otherworldly light. I tried to flee, to escape the clutches of the haunted vessel, but the spirits surrounded me, their spectral forms blocking every exit. Their voices rose in a chorus of lamentation, accusing me of trespassing upon their domain, of desecrating their final resting place in search of treasure. I pleaded for mercy, for forgiveness, but the spirits were deaf to my cries. With each passing moment, their grip tightened around me, their icy fingers draining the warmth from my body. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness. I stumbled out of the ship, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind reeling from the encounter. As I collapsed onto the cold ground, I knew that I had escaped with my life, but at what cost? The treasure lay forgotten, buried beneath the waves, lost to the depths of the sea, along with the cursed vessel that guarded it. And though I had escaped the ghost ship, its memory would haunt me for the rest of my days, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkest corners of the world. Story 15. In the dimly lit confines of my small photography studio, I found myself lost in the mesmerizing process of developing old film reels. Each reel held within it the potential to unveil hidden memories, to capture fleeting moments frozen in time. But little did I know that within the depths of those reels lay a chilling mystery that would shake me to my core. It started innocently enough, with the unearthing of a dusty box of forgotten photographs tucked away in the corner of the studio. Curiosity piqued. I carefully began to sift through the contents, my fingers tracing the faded edges of each photograph with reverence. Most of the images depicted mundane scenes, family gatherings, scenic landscapes, and the occasional portrait captured in black and white. But as I delved deeper into the box, I began to notice something peculiar. In the background of several photographs, a faint figure lurked, its presence barely discernible amidst the shadows. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the light, a smudge on the lens, but as I continued to examine the photographs, I realized that the figure appeared in every single one, its form growing more distinct with each roll of film. Panic began to gnaw at the edges of my mind as I scrambled to make sense of what I was seeing. Who was this mysterious figure, and why did it seem to haunt every photograph it appeared in? Desperate for answers, I turned to the only source of information I had: the photographs themselves. As I studied the images more closely, I noticed subtle differences in the figure's appearance from one photograph to the next. In some, it appeared as little more than a shadowy silhouette, barely visible against the backdrop of the scene. But in others, its features were more defined: a twisted smirk, eyes that gleamed with an otherworldly light. Driven by a mixture of fear and fascination, I resolved to uncover the truth behind the phantom photographer that had invaded my life. Armed with my camera and a handful of freshly loaded film reels, I set out to capture the elusive figure in action, to prove once and for all that it was more than just a figment of my imagination. For days, I roamed the streets of the city, snapping photographs of every alleyway, every abandoned building, every darkened corner where the phantom might lurk. With each click of the shutter, I felt the weight of its presence growing heavier, as if it were drawing closer with each passing moment. And then, just when I had begun to lose hope, it happened. In the dim glow of a street lamp, I captured the phantom in all its eerie glory, its twisted form leering out from the shadows like a specter from the depths of the underworld. Triumph surged through me as I rushed back to the safety of my studio, eager to develop the film and finally lay my fears to rest. But as I watched the images slowly materialize in the developer solution, my triumph turned to horror. For there, in the background of every single photograph, the phantom loomed large, its presence more menacing than ever before. It was as if it had been waiting for me, biding its time until it could reveal itself in all its terrible glory. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized the truth. The phantom was not content to remain a mere observer. It was drawing closer with each passing moment, its spectral form intent on claiming me as its next subject. And as the photographs continued to develop, I knew that my time was running out. Terrified, I gathered up the reels of film and fled from the studio, the echo of my footsteps ringing in my ears as I raced through the empty streets. But no matter how far I ran, I could feel the phantom's presence looming over me, its malevolent gaze burning into my soul. In the end, I knew there was no escape. The phantom had chosen me as its next victim, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And as I felt its icy grip close around me, dragging me into the darkness, I realized that some mysteries are better left unsolved, some photographs better left undeveloped. Story 16. In the heart of the countryside, where the dense canopy of trees stretched out as far as the eye could see, I stumbled upon a forgotten well nestled in the depths of the forest. It stood silent and solemn, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. Intrigued by its mysterious presence, I felt a tug of curiosity pulling me closer, beckoning me to explore its depths. As I approached the well, a sense of unease washed over me, like a chill breeze whispering through the trees. The air seemed heavy with the weight of centuries, and a feeling of foreboding settled over me like a suffocating blanket. Ignoring the instinctual urge to turn back, I peered over the edge, my heart pounding in my chest. The waters below were dark and murky, reflecting the shadowy depths of the forest above. As I gazed into the abyss, I fancied I heard the faint sound of whispers drifting up from below, like the murmurs of ghosts long forgotten. But it was not fear that gripped me, it was curiosity, a burning desire to uncover the secrets hidden within the depths of the well. Summoning all my courage, I reached out a trembling hand, fingertips barely grazing the surface of the water. And then, in an instant, everything changed. I felt a sudden violent tug, as if unseen hands had seized hold of me and were dragging me into the depths below. With a cry of alarm, I tried to pull away, but it was no use. The force pulling me was relentless, its grip unyielding. I could feel myself being dragged closer and closer to the edge, the sound of my own heartbeat drowning out the whispers that echoed from below. Just as I felt myself teetering on the brink of oblivion, I summoned one final burst of strength and flung myself backward, breaking free from the invisible grasp that sought to claim me. Gasping for breath, heart hammering in my chest, I scrambled away from the well, eyes wide with terror. For a moment I lay there on the forest floor, panting and trembling, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had it all been a trick of the mind, a hallucination brought on by the eerie atmosphere of the forest? Or had I truly come face to face with something dark and malevolent lurking within the depths of the well? As I struggled to regain my composure, a sense of dread settled over me like a shroud. I knew then that I could not simply walk away and leave the well behind me, not without uncovering the truth of its dark secrets. And so, with a newfound determination burning within me, I rose to my feet and returned to the edge of the well, steeling myself for whatever horrors lay below. This time, as I peered into the murky waters, I felt a presence stirring within the depths, a presence that reached out to me with tendrils of darkness. But I was not afraid. With a resolute heart, I plunged into the well, descending into the abyss with a courage born of desperation. The waters closed in around me, enveloping me in their icy embrace as I sank deeper and deeper into the darkness. And then, just when I thought I could go no further, I saw a faint glimmer of light beckoning me onward, a beacon of hope amidst the suffocating blackness. With renewed determination, I swam toward the light, kicking and thrashing against the oppressive weight of the water. and as I emerged from the depths, gasping for breath, I found myself standing in a cavern bathed in an ethereal glow. Before me stood a figure shrouded in mist, its features obscured by shadow. But as I gazed into its eyes, I felt a sense of recognition wash over me, as if I had known this being in another life. And in that moment, as the whispers of the well faded into silence, I knew that I had uncovered a truth far greater than I could have ever imagined. Story 17. In the dimly lit study of my family's ancestral home, I uncovered a dusty old chest hidden away in the corner, its contents obscured by the passage of time. Intrigued by the mystery it held, I carefully pried open the lid, revealing a trove of forgotten treasures nestled within its depths. Among them I found a small, intricately carved amulet, its surface glinting in the soft glow of lamplight. As I lifted the amulet from its resting place, a shiver ran down my spine, as if a cold breeze had swept through the room. But despite the chill that prickled at my skin, I felt drawn to the ancient artifact, its presence calling out to me with an inexplicable allure. Unaware of the dark forces that lay dormant within the amulet, I fastened it around my neck, the weight of its ancient power settling against my chest like a leaden weight. At first it seemed harmless enough, a mere trinket to adorn my person. But as the days passed, I began to notice subtle changes within myself, a shift in my thoughts and desires that I could not explain. Slowly but surely, the amulet's insidious influence began to take hold, its power seeping into every corner of my mind like a creeping vine. Dark thoughts and sinister urges clouded my thoughts, twisting my perceptions until I could no longer distinguish between reality and illusion. At night, I would lie awake, tormented by nightmares that seemed to echo the amulet's malevolent whispers. I would wake drenched in sweat, the memory of those haunting visions clinging to me like a second skin. And during the day, I found myself drawn to the shadows, seeking solace in the darkness that now seemed to envelop me like a shroud. Desperate to break free from the amulet's grip, I sought help from those closest to me, but none could offer a solution to the curse that bound me. It was as if the amulet had woven itself into the very fabric of my being, its influence too strong to be broken by mortal means. In my desperation, I turned to ancient texts and forbidden rituals, scouring the darkest corners of the world in search of a way to rid myself of the cursed artifact. But with each passing day, the amulet's power grew stronger, its hold on me tightening like a noose around my neck. And then, just when I had resigned myself to my fate, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. A mysterious stranger arrived at the doorstep of my ancestral home, claiming to possess knowledge of the amulet's true nature and the means to break its curse. With nothing left to lose, I welcomed the stranger into my home, eager to learn the secrets that had eluded me for so long. As they spoke of ancient rituals and forgotten incantations, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me, a flicker of light in the darkness that threatened to consume me. Together we embarked on a perilous journey into the heart of darkness, venturing into realms where few dared to tread. We faced trials and tribulations beyond imagining, battling against forces that sought to snuff out the light of hope that burned within us. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, we stood before the source of the amulet's power, an ancient altar hidden deep within a labyrinth of winding tunnels and treacherous traps. With trembling hands, I reached out and touched the amulet, channeling the energy of the ancient ritual into its cursed form. As the amulet began to glow with an otherworldly light, I felt the darkness that had consumed me for so long begin to recede, like a tide retreating from the shore. And in that moment, as the curse was broken and the amulet's power was vanquished, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. Story 18. The day I moved into my new home, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. It was a quaint little house nestled on the outskirts of town, its white picket fence and charming exterior belying the darkness that lurked within. Unbeknownst to me, the house held a tragic history, one that would soon become all too real. At first, everything seemed perfect. The house was spacious and cozy, the perfect place to start a new chapter of my life. But as the days turned into weeks, strange things began to happen. Objects would inexplicably move on their own, strange noises echoed through the halls at night, and a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy fog. I brushed off these occurrences as mere coincidences, attributing them to the quirks of an old house. But as the hauntings grew more intense, I could no longer deny the truth. There was something sinister lurking within the walls of my new home. Each night I was plagued by nightmares of a vengeful spirit, its form twisted and contorted with rage. In my dreams, it would stalk me through the corridors of the house, its icy fingers reaching out to drag me into the darkness. I would wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding in my chest, only to find that the nightmare had followed me into the waking world. As the hauntings grew more frequent and more intense, I began to research the history of the house, hoping to uncover the source of the spirit's anger. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Years ago, the house had been the site of a tragic accident of fire that had claimed the lives of an entire family. Rumors swirled about the cause of the fire, whispers of foul play and unspeakable deeds. But one thing was certain: the spirits of those who had perished in the flames still lingered within the walls, their restless souls seeking retribution for the injustices done to them. Terrified, I reached out to experts in the paranormal, desperate for a solution to the hauntings that had consumed my life. But no matter how many exorcisms were performed or blessings were bestowed upon the house, the spirit remained, its presence growing stronger with each passing day. I began to fear for my sanity, as the line between dreams and reality blurred into obscurity. I could feel the spirit's malevolent gaze upon me at all times, its whispers echoing in the recesses of my mind like a sinister melody. Desperate for relief, I turned to ancient texts and forbidden rituals, willing to risk everything to rid myself of the vengeful spirit that haunted me. But with each failed attempt, the spirit's anger only seemed to grow, its wrath directed solely at me. I felt as though I were trapped in a nightmare from which I could not wake, the walls of the house closing in around me like a prison. And as the hauntings grew more intense, I realized with a sinking heart that there was no escape from the spirit's wrath. In the end, I made a desperate decision to confront the spirit head-on, to face the darkness that had consumed my life, and find a way to lay it to rest once and for all. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with fear, I ventured into the depths of the house, where the spirit awaited me with bated breath. As I stood face to face with the vengeful spirit, its form twisted and contorted with rage, I knew that this would be my final battle. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I reached out to the spirit, offering it the forgiveness it so desperately sought. And in that moment, as the spirit's anger melted away, replaced by a sense of peace and acceptance, I knew that I had finally found the closure I had been seeking. As the sun rose on a new day, I left the house behind me, knowing that I had conquered the darkness that had threatened to consume me. Story 19. When I was a child, there was an old playground on the outskirts of town, tucked away in the shadows of towering trees. It was a place of mystery and intrigue, whispered about in hushed tones by the children of the neighborhood. They said it was haunted, that the spirits of children who had met tragic ends roamed its rusted swings and creaking slides. But as a child, I was fearless, fueled by a sense of curiosity that knew no bounds. I would sneak away from home, drawn to the playground like a moth to a flame. Despite the warnings of my friends and the rumors that swirled around it like a dark cloud, I felt an inexplicable pull toward the old, abandoned play equipment. On those long summer days, I would spend hours lost in play, the laughter of ghostly children echoing in my ears as I swung higher and higher into the sky. It was as if the playground itself had come alive, its rusty metal frames and splintered wooden seats pulsating with a strange, otherworldly energy. But as the years passed and I grew older, the memories of the playground faded into the recesses of my mind. Life moved on and I left the town behind, chasing dreams and aspirations that lay beyond the confines of my childhood home. It wasn't until many years later, as an adult returning to my hometown for a brief visit, that I once again found myself standing before the old playground. Time had not been kind to it. The swings hung at odd angles, their chains rusted and twisted, and the slides were coated in a thick layer of grime. But despite its dilapidated appearance, the playground still held a strange allure, a siren song that called out to me from the depths of my memories. Ignoring the warnings that echoed in the back of my mind, I stepped through the rusted gate and into the playground's embrace. At first, everything seemed normal. The air was still and silent, the only sound the gentle creaking of the swings as they swayed in the breeze. But as I walked deeper into the playground, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy fog. And then I heard the faint sound of laughter, echoing through the stillness of the air. It was the laughter of children, pure and innocent, yet tinged with a hint of something darker, something sinister. I turned to flee, to escape the grasp of the playground's haunted past, but it was too late. The swings began to move on their own, their rusty chains groaning with the effort. And then, as if by some unseen force, I was lifted into the air, the laughter of ghostly children ringing in my ears as I soared higher and higher into the sky. Panic seized me as I struggled against the invisible hands that held me aloft, but it was no use. I was trapped in the playground's grasp, at the mercy of forces beyond my understanding. As the laughter grew louder and more frenzied, I realized with a sinking heart that I was not alone. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, their forms twisted and contorted into grotesque shapes. And then they emerged from the darkness, the spirits of the children who had met tragic ends in this cursed place, their faces twisted with rage and despair. I tried to reason with them, to plead for mercy, but they were deaf to my cries. With each passing moment, their grip tightened around me, their ghostly hands draining the warmth from my body. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I heard a voice from my childhood, calling out to me from the depths of my memories. With a surge of strength born from desperation, I reached out to the voice, grasping onto it like a lifeline. And in that moment, as the laughter of the ghostly children faded into the distance, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The playground released its hold, and I stumbled out into the cool night air, shaken but alive. As I looked back at the old playground, I knew that I would never forget the horrors I had witnessed within its rusted gates. But I also knew that I had survived, that I had faced my fears, and emerged victorious. And as I walked away, leaving the haunted playground behind me, I vowed never to return again. Story 20. The night was dark, and still as I stood on the deserted platform, the only sound the faint whistle of the wind as it danced through the empty station. The train before me sat silent and foreboding, its windows reflecting the pale light of the moon like ghostly eyes peering out from the darkness. Despite the chill that ran down my spine, I stepped onto the platform and approached the train, an inexplicable sense of curiosity drawing me closer. As I reached out to grasp the cold metal handle of the door, a shiver ran through me, as if a warning from some unseen force. Ignoring the unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I stepped onto the deserted train and watched as the doors slammed shut behind me with a resounding clang. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was trapped, the only passenger aboard a train hurtling through the darkness at an impossible speed. I stumbled through the empty corridors, the dim glow of the flickering overhead lights casting eerie shadows along the walls. Each step I took seemed to echo through the silence, a lonely sound in the vast emptiness of the train. As I searched for a way out, I felt a chill settle over me, as if the very air itself had grown cold and heavy with the weight of unseen forces. And then I heard the sound of voices whispering in the darkness, their words indistinct yet filled with an unmistakable sense of anguish and despair. Heart pounding in my chest, I followed the whispers to the end of the corridor, where a door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light shining through the crack. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door and stepped into the room beyond. What I saw there froze me in place, the blood running cold in my veins. The room was filled with the ghostly apparitions of passengers long gone, their faces twisted in agony, their eyes empty and hollow. They floated through the air like specters, their movements ethereal and haunting. I tried to speak, to ask them what had happened, but no sound escaped my lips. Instead, I stood frozen in terror as the ghosts drew closer, their eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. As I backed away, the whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices that echoed off the walls like a chorus of the damned. I felt as though I were drowning in their sorrow, suffocated by the weight of their anguish. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the whispers ceased, leaving me standing alone in the darkness once more. But the memory of what I had seen lingered, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked within the phantom train. With a newfound sense of urgency, I continued to search for an escape, my footsteps quickening as I raced through the corridors in search of a way out. But no matter how hard I tried, every door I came across was locked tight, refusing to yield to my desperate attempts to break free. As the train hurtled through the darkness, I felt a sense of hopelessness settle over me like a heavy blanket. It seemed that there was no escape from the phantom train, no way to break free from its grasp. But just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a small hatch in the floor of one of the compartments. With a surge of adrenaline, I pried it open and peered into the darkness below, the sound of rushing wind and distant screams filling my ears. Without hesitation, I lowered myself into the hatch and dropped into the abyss below, the wind whipping at my hair as I plummeted through the darkness. And then, with a jolt that rattled my bones, I landed on solid ground, the sound of the train fading into the distance above me. As I staggered to my feet, I realized that I had escaped the clutches of the phantom train, that I had survived the horrors that lurked within its rusted corridors. But as I looked up at the moonlit sky above me, I knew that the memory of that night would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of reality. Story 21. The historic theater loomed over the bustling city streets, its grand facade a testament to a bygone era of glamour and entertainment. As I stepped through its ornate doors, I felt a shiver run down my spine, as if the very walls whispered secrets of ages past. Little did I know I was about to embark on a theatrical journey unlike any other. Rehearsals began innocently enough, with the cast and crew buzzing with excitement for the upcoming production. But it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to unfold. Props would inexplicably move from their designated spots, costumes went missing only to reappear in the most unlikely of places, and eerie voices seemed to echo through the empty halls long after everyone had left for the night. At first, we brushed off these occurrences as mere coincidences, chalking them up to the quirks of an old building. But as rehearsals progressed, the incidents grew more frequent and more unsettling. It was as if the theater itself was alive, its very foundations haunted by the spirits of its past performers. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, especially when I found myself alone on stage, bathed in the soft glow of the spotlight. It was during one such solitary moment that I first encountered the presence that lingered in the shadows. As I delivered my lines with practiced precision, a cold breeze swept through the theater, extinguishing the lights and plunging the stage into darkness. Heart racing, I fumbled for my flashlight, its feeble beam barely penetrating the thick veil of blackness that enveloped me. And then, from the darkness emerged a figure, a spectral silhouette that seemed to hover just beyond the reach of my trembling hands. I froze, unable to move as the ghostly apparition drifted closer, its ethereal form flickering like a candle in the wind. But instead of instilling fear, a sense of calm washed over me as I gazed into the spirit's translucent eyes. There was a sadness there, a longing for something lost to the passage of time. And as quickly as it had appeared, the ghost vanished, leaving me alone once more in the silent theater. From that moment on, I knew that our production was more than just a play. It was a communion with the spirits that dwelled within the walls of the theater. With each passing day, I felt their presence grow stronger, guiding our performances with an otherworldly grace that transcended the bounds of mortal artistry. But as opening night approached, so too did the realization that our connection with the spirits came at a cost. Strange accidents plagued the cast and crew, as if the ghosts sought to reclaim the spotlight for themselves. Yet, despite the setbacks and the ever-present sense of unease, we pressed on, determined to give the performance of a lifetime. And on the night of the premiere, as the audience settled into their seats and the curtain rose on the stage, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. For in that moment, I knew that we were not alone, that the spirits of the theater were with us, guiding our every step as we brought their stories to life once more. As the final curtain fell and the applause thundered through the theater, I looked out into the sea of faces, knowing that our performance had touched something deeper than mere entertainment. For in the haunted theater, we had forged a connection that transcended the boundaries of time and space, a connection that would linger long after the lights had dimmed and the audience had gone home. Story 22. The flea market was a maze of hidden treasures and forgotten relics, each item holding the promise of a story waiting to be told. It was amidst this eclectic array of goods that I stumbled upon the antique mask, its intricate designs and weathered surface drawing me in like a moth to a flame. As I lifted the mask from its resting place, a shiver ran down my spine, as if a chill wind had swept through the crowded marketplace. Ignoring the faint sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I handed over the coins and took possession of my newfound treasure. At first, the mask seemed harmless enough, a mere curiosity to adorn the walls of my home. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in its demeanor. Its eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went, their gaze burning into my soul with a malevolent intensity that sent shivers down my spine. At night, I would lie awake in bed, the weight of the mask's presence pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. I could feel its eyes boring into me from across the room, their piercing stare filling me with a sense of dread that I could not shake. Desperate for relief, I sought answers from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of curses and malevolent spirits that lurked within the mask's ancient surface, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing night, the mask's presence grew stronger, its influence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could feel myself slipping further and further into its grasp, the line between reality and nightmare blurring into obscurity. Driven by a sense of desperation, I embarked on a journey to uncover the truth behind the mask's curse, scouring ancient texts and forbidden tomes in search of answers. But the deeper I delved into the darkness, the more I realized that the mask held secrets far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. It was then that I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. The mask was not merely a vessel for a malevolent spirit, but a gateway to a realm of unspeakable horror. With each passing day, its influence grew stronger, drawing me ever closer to the brink of madness. Haunted by visions of a darkness beyond comprehension, I knew that I had to act fast if I were to break free from the mask's grip. With trembling hands, I set out to destroy the cursed artifact, hoping that by doing so, I could sever the ties that bound me to its malevolent influence. But the mask was not so easily defeated. As I raised the hammer high above my head, ready to deliver the final blow, I felt a surge of power emanating from its ancient surface. And then, with a deafening crack, the mask shattered into 1,000 pieces, releasing a wave of darkness that engulfed me in its icy embrace. As the darkness closed in around me, I felt myself being pulled into a realm of nightmares, where twisted creatures lurked in the shadows and the very air seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. With every fiber of my being, I fought against the darkness, struggling to break free from its suffocating grip. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I felt a glimmer of light piercing through the darkness. With a newfound sense of determination, I reached out to the light, grasping onto it with all my strength. With a sudden rush of energy, I broke free from the darkness, emerging back into the world of the living with a newfound sense of purpose. The mask lay in ruins at my feet, its curse broken once and for all. But as I looked down at the shattered remains of the artifact, I knew that the darkness it had unleashed would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the mask's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. Story 23. The city streets were shrouded in darkness as I made my way home, the echo of my footsteps the only sound breaking the eerie silence of the night. The familiar route, usually bustling with activity, now seemed deserted, cloaked in an unsettling stillness that set my nerves on edge. As I turned down a dimly lit alleyway, a chill ran down my spine, sending a shiver cascading through my body. It was then that I saw a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness, its form barely discernible against the inky blackness of the night. My heart pounded in my chest as I took in the sight before me. The figure stood motionless, its silhouette a grotesque mockery of human form. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly malice, piercing through the darkness like twin beacons of malevolence. Fear seized me, paralyzing my limbs as I stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze away from the haunting specter that loomed before me. I knew then, with a bone-deep certainty, that I was in the presence of something not of this world, that I had stumbled upon a creature of the night, a denizen of the shadows. Desperate to escape the creature's gaze, I turned on my heel and bolted down the alleyway, my footsteps echoing off the cold, unforgiving walls that hemmed me in on all sides. But no matter how fast I ran, the figure was always close behind, its presence looming ever larger in the darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. Panic clawed at my chest as I raced through the labyrinthine streets, each turn leading me deeper into the heart of the city's shadowy underbelly. I could feel the creature's icy breath on the back of my neck, its malevolent aura seeping into my very bones with every passing moment. And then, just when I thought I could run no more, I stumbled upon a forgotten alleyway, its entrance obscured by a tangle of overgrown vines and creeping ivy. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled determination, I threw myself into the narrow passageway, the darkness enveloping me like a suffocating shroud. For what felt like an eternity, I stumbled blindly through the inky blackness, guided only by the faint glimmer of moonlight that filtered through the tangled canopy above. But just as I began to fear that I had become lost in the labyrinth of shadows, I stumbled upon a faint glow emanating from the depths of the alley. With cautious steps, I approached the source of the light, my heart pounding in my ears as I prepared to face whatever lay in wait on the other side. And then, with a rush of relief, I emerged into a small clearing bathed in the soft glow of a flickering street lamp. But even as I basked in the comforting light, I knew that the shadowy figure still lurked in the darkness, its presence a constant reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the realm of the unknown. And though I had escaped its clutches for now, I knew that the encounter would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the night I came face to face with the darkness that lurks within us all. Story 24. It was a dusty tome hidden away in the forgotten corner of an ancient library, its leather-bound cover weathered by centuries of neglect. Intrigued by its mysterious appearance, I reached out and pulled the book from its resting place, the weight of its ancient power sending a shiver down my spine. As I flipped through its yellowed pages, I felt a sense of unease settle over me, as if the very air around me had grown heavy with the weight of the book's secrets. Strange symbols danced across the pages, their meaning lost to the passage of time, and the faint scent of musty parchment filled my nostrils. Ignoring the warning signs that whispered in the back of my mind, I began to read, my eyes tracing the intricate patterns of ink that adorned the pages. With each word that passed my lips, I felt a strange energy pulsating through me, as if the book itself were reaching out and drawing me into its dark embrace. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the words seemed to take on a life of their own, swirling around me in a whirlwind of darkness. I could feel the book's power coursing through me, filling my mind with strange thoughts and whispered promises of untold power. As I delved deeper into the book's secrets, I realized that I had unleashed a darkness that threatened to consume me. The whispers grew louder, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its seductive embrace. At first I resisted, fighting against the darkness that threatened to overwhelm me. But with each passing day, the book's hold on me grew stronger, its influence seeping into every corner of my mind like a poison spreading through my veins. I tried to put the book away, to cast it aside and forget the dark path it had led me down. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape its grasp. It called out to me in the dead of night, its whispers echoing through the darkness like a siren song. Desperate for relief, I sought answers from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the occult. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of forbidden rituals and ancient curses that lurked within the book's pages, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel myself slipping further and further into the abyss, the line between reality and nightmare blurring into obscurity. I was consumed by a hunger for power, a thirst for knowledge that could never be quenched. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the book's pages was a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to its dark influence. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the ritual passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the book fell from my hands, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the forbidden tome lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the book's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. Story 25. The family heirloom ring had always held a special place in our family's history, a symbol of lineage and tradition passed down through generations. As I slipped it onto my finger, I felt a surge of pride, knowing that I was now the bearer of this cherished relic. Little did I know, however, that the ring carried with it a dark and malevolent secret, a curse that would soon consume me in its grip. At first, the ring's power was subtle, its influence creeping into my thoughts and emotions like a whisper in the night. But as the days wore on, I began to notice a change within myself, a growing sense of detachment from those around me, replaced by a gnawing hunger for power and control. At first, I dismissed these feelings as mere figments of my imagination, chalking them up to the stress of daily life. But as the ring tightened its grip around my psyche, I could no longer deny the truth. I was being consumed by its malevolent influence, my thoughts and actions no longer my own. It was as if the ring had a mind of its own, manipulating my desires and emotions to suit its own sinister agenda. Each day I found myself growing more distant from my loved ones, consumed by a darkness that seemed to emanate from the very depths of my soul. But it wasn't just my relationships that suffered under the ring's curse. My once peaceful life descended into chaos as I found myself drawn to darker and more sinister pursuits. I became reckless, my actions fueled by a twisted sense of euphoria that came with embracing the ring's malevolent power. And yet, even as I reveled in my newfound abilities, a part of me longed to break free from the ring's grip, to reclaim my sense of self and banish the darkness that threatened to consume me whole. Desperate for answers, I turned to ancient tomes and forbidden texts, scouring their pages for any mention of the cursed ring that now bound me in its thrall. But the more I searched, the clearer it became that there was no easy solution to breaking the ring's curse, no magic spell or incantation that could sever the bond between us. In my darkest moments, I considered simply casting the ring aside, ridding myself of its cursed influence once and for all. But each time I tried, I found myself unable to part with the relic that had become so deeply intertwined with my very being. It was then that I realized the true nature of the ring's curse. It wasn't just a physical object, but a manifestation of the darkness that lurked within my own soul. And until I confronted that darkness head-on, I would forever be at the mercy of its malevolent influence. Determined to break free from the ring's grip, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery, delving deep into the recesses of my own mind in search of the strength to resist its temptations. It was a harrowing journey, filled with trials and tribulations that pushed me to the brink of madness. But with each passing day, I felt myself growing stronger, my willpower bolstered by the knowledge that I alone held the key to my salvation. And though the ring's influence never truly waned, I found solace in the knowledge that I was no longer its helpless pawn, but a warrior fighting to reclaim my own destiny. In the end, it was not through magic or mysticism that I broke the ring's curse, but through sheer force of will and a steadfast belief in the power of redemption. And as I finally cast the cursed relic aside, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, knowing that I was free at last from the darkness that had threatened to consume me. Though the scars of the ring's curse would forever linger, I emerged from the ordeal stronger and more resilient than ever before, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. And though the ring may have been a symbol of my family's past, I knew that my future belonged to me alone. Story 26. The day I brought the ancient sculpture into my home, I had no idea of the darkness that lay hidden within its weathered stone. It had called out to me from the cluttered shelves of the antique shop, its twisted form and haunting gaze captivating me in a way I could not explain. Ignoring the warnings of the shopkeeper, I handed over my coins and took possession of the cursed artifact. At first, everything seemed normal. The sculpture sat silent and motionless on its pedestal, its stone eyes staring out into the room with an unsettling intensity. But as the days passed, strange occurrences began to plague my home. I would wake in the middle of the night to find the sculpture in a different position than where I had left it, as if it had moved of its own accord. Whispers echoed through the halls, their words indistinct yet filled with a sense of malevolence that sent shivers down my spine. Desperate for answers, I delved into the history of the sculpture, scouring ancient texts and forgotten tomes in search of clues. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Centuries ago, the sculpture had been created by a mad sculptor, its twisted form a reflection of the darkness that lurked within his soul. Legend spoke of a curse that had been placed upon the sculpture, binding the spirit of the sculptor to its stone form for all eternity. As I read on, I realized that I had unwittingly unleashed the spirit of the sculptor upon my home, unleashing a darkness that threatened to consume me. With each passing day, the sculpture's hold on me grew stronger, its malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I tried to rid myself of the cursed artifact, to cast it aside and forget the horrors it had brought into my life. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape its grasp. It called out to me in the dead of night, its whispers echoing through the darkness like a haunting melody. As the weeks turned into months, I could feel myself slipping further and further into the abyss. The line between reality and nightmare blurred into obscurity, and I found myself haunted by visions of a darkness beyond comprehension. Desperate for relief, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the sculpture's twisted form, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, the sculpture seemed to grow stronger, its malevolent presence consuming my home like a shadow creeping across the land. I could feel the spirit of the mad sculptor reaching out to me, its twisted fingers wrapping around my soul with an iron grip. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of the ancient texts I had been studying was a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the sculpture's malevolent spirit. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the ritual passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the sculpture crumbled to dust before my eyes, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the pile of rubble that lay at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the sculpture's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. Story 27. The old mine stood on the edge of town, its entrance a dark maw gaping wide, inviting curious souls to explore its secrets. For years, it had been nothing but a relic of the past, forgotten by time and buried beneath layers of dust and neglect. Yet, despite its dilapidated state, there was an eerie allure about it, drawing in those brave or foolish enough to venture inside. I was one of those fools, driven by a morbid curiosity that gnawed at me until I could resist it no longer. So one fateful evening, I found myself standing at the mouth of the mine, a dim flashlight in hand and a sense of foreboding weighing heavy on my chest. As I stepped over the threshold, the air grew thick and oppressive, suffocating in its darkness. The beam of my flashlight cut through the gloom, illuminating rusted mining equipment and decaying wooden supports that groaned under the weight of years. Strange noises echoed off the walls, the sound of dripping water and shifting earth mingling with something altogether more sinister, a soft, insidious whisper that seemed to worm its way into my mind. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping unease that threatened to overwhelm me. It was just my imagination, I told myself, nothing more than the echoes of my own fears bouncing off the walls of the mine. But as I descended deeper into the earth, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they seemed to surround me on all sides. It was as if the very air itself was alive with malevolent intent, each whispered word a twisted promise of doom. Still, I pressed on, driven by a morbid fascination that bordered on madness. What secrets lay hidden in the bowels of the earth, waiting to be unearthed by my trembling hands? I had to know, had to satisfy the gnawing hunger that consumed me from within. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, the air colder, until I could see my breath misting in front of me. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, I saw a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision, a shape lurking in the shadows just beyond the reach of my feeble light. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to face whatever lurked in the darkness, my hands trembling as I raised the flashlight aloft. But when the beam of light cut through the gloom, there was nothing there, just empty space and the echo of my own ragged breath. I laughed nervously, the sound hollow and mirthless in the oppressive silence of the mine. It was just a trick of the light, I told myself, a figment of my overactive imagination. But even as I tried to convince myself of this, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of something scraping against stone, the dull thud of footsteps echoing off the walls of the mine. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins as I listened to the approaching footsteps, each one drawing closer and closer, until they were right on top of me. And then, without warning, the darkness erupted in a cacophony of sound and motion, as if the very walls of the mine had come alive with a life of their own. I screamed. A primal sound of terror ripped from the depths of my soul as I turned and fled, my footsteps echoing off the walls as I raced blindly through the darkness. Behind me, I could hear the sound of pursuit, a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I didn't dare to look back, didn't dare to stop until I burst out into the blinding light of day, my lungs burning with exertion and fear. And even then, as I collapsed to the ground gasping for air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, waiting in the shadows for its next victim. The abandoned mine stood silent and still, its secrets buried deep beneath the earth, waiting for another foolhardy soul to uncover them. But as for me, I knew that I would never set foot in that cursed place again, not if I valued my life. Story 28. The historic hotel stood at the edge of town, its grand facade a testament to a bygone era of opulence and luxury. Intrigued by its storied past, I had eagerly booked a room for the weekend, eager to immerse myself in the hotel's rich history. As I stepped through the ornate double doors and into the lobby, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if a cold breeze had swept through the grand entrance. Ignoring the faint sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I approached the front desk and checked in for my stay. At first, everything seemed normal. The hotel was bustling with activity, guests coming and going, the sound of laughter and conversation filling the air. But as the day turned to night, strange occurrences began to plague my stay. I would wake in the middle of the night to find objects moving on their own, their positions changed as if by some unseen force. Eerie voices echoed through the halls, their words indistinct yet filled with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down my spine. Desperate for answers, I sought out the hotel's staff, hoping to uncover the source of the strange phenomena that plagued my stay. But their explanations offered little comfort, for they spoke of vengeful spirits and restless souls that lurked within the hotel's walls, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting guests in their web of darkness. Intrigued by their words, I delved into the history of the hotel, scouring old newspapers and dusty archives in search of clues. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Years ago, the hotel had been the site of a tragic murder, a crime of passion that had left one of the guests dead and the other consumed by guilt and remorse. Rumors swirled about the circumstances of the murder, whispers of betrayal and revenge that echoed through the halls like a ghostly lament. As I read on, I realized that I had unwittingly checked into a hotel haunted by vengeful spirits, their restless souls seeking retribution for the injustices done to them. With each passing day, the hotel's dark history seemed to seep into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I tried to leave, to cast aside the hotel's haunted past and forget the horrors that had plagued my stay. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape its grasp. It called out to me in the dead of night, its whispers echoing through the darkness like a haunting melody. As the days turned into weeks, I could feel myself slipping further and further into the abyss. The line between reality and nightmare blurred into obscurity, and I found myself haunted by visions of a darkness beyond comprehension. Desperate for relief, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the hotel's haunted halls, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, the hotel seemed to grow stronger, its malevolent presence consuming me like a shadow creeping across the land. I could feel the vengeful spirits reaching out to me, their twisted fingers wrapping around my soul with an iron grip. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of the hotel's archives was a journal that spoke of a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound the vengeful spirits to the hotel's haunted halls. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the ritual passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the vengeful spirits faded into the shadows, their cursed hold on the hotel broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked back at the hotel that had been my prison for so long, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the hotel's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. Story 29. It began innocently enough, as many sinister tales often do. A dusty old record found hidden away in the attic of an abandoned house, its cover adorned with faded artwork that hinted at mysteries long forgotten. I stumbled upon it by chance, drawn to the dilapidated mansion by rumors of hidden treasures and haunted secrets. As I dusted off the cover and examined the worn grooves of the vinyl, a sense of excitement tinged with apprehension washed over me. What secrets did this record hold? What stories did its haunting melodies whisper to those who dared to listen? With trembling hands, I placed the record on the turntable of an old phonograph, the needle crackling to life as it made contact with the grooves. And then, as if by magic, the room was filled with music, a haunting melody that seemed to seep into my very soul, wrapping its tendrils around my mind and refusing to let go. At first, I was entranced by the beauty of the music, lost in its melancholy notes and haunting refrains. But as the minutes stretched into hours, I began to feel a subtle shift, a dark undercurrent that pulsed beneath the surface of the melody, twisting and distorting its once peaceful strains into something altogether more sinister. With each passing moment, the music seemed to grow louder, more insistent, until it drowned out the world around me, leaving me adrift in a sea of sound and sensation. Images flashed before my eyes, visions of unspeakable horrors and forbidden desires that sent shivers down my spine. Desperate to break free from the music's grip, I reached for the volume knob, intending to silence the record once and for all. But to my horror, my hand refused to obey, as if held in thrall by some unseen force that commanded me to listen, to surrender myself to the music's dark embrace. And so I listened, powerless to resist as the music consumed me, filling my mind with dark thoughts and sinister urges. Each note seemed to seep into my soul, twisting and distorting my perceptions of reality until I could no longer distinguish between truth and illusion. I tried to scream, to tear myself away from the hypnotic pull of the music, but my voice was lost amidst the cacophony of sound that surrounded me. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own making, ensnared by the malevolent melody that echoed through the halls of my mind. But just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a faint glimmer of light pierced the darkness of memory, buried deep within the recesses of my consciousness, of a time before the music, before the darkness that threatened to consume me. With a supreme effort of will, I reached out for that memory, clinging to it like a lifeline as I struggled to break free from the music's grip. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, the hold of the melody began to weaken, its power fading as I fought to reclaim control of my mind. At last, with one final surge of determination, I managed to reach the turntable and flick the needle away from the record. The music abruptly silenced as if cut off by an unseen hand. For a moment there was only silence, a blessed respite from the chaos that had consumed me. And then, as the echoes of the music faded into nothingness, I collapsed to the floor, my body racked with exhaustion and relief. I had escaped the clutches of the malevolent music, but at what cost? What darkness still lingered within me, waiting to be unleashed by the next unsuspecting soul to stumble upon that cursed record? As I lay there, haunted by the memories of what had transpired, I knew that I could never truly be free from the music's influence. Its echoes would linger in the recesses of my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of reality, waiting to ensnare those who dared to listen. Story 30. The day I stumbled upon the old film reels tucked away in the dusty attic of my family's ancestral home, I had no idea that I was about to uncover a mystery that would consume me entirely. As I sifted through the boxes of forgotten memories, my fingers brushed against the cool metal canisters, each one holding the promise of a story waiting to be told. With trembling hands, I selected a reel at random and made my way down to the basement, where my father's old dark room lay dormant and forgotten. As I loaded the reel into the ancient projector and switched on the light, I felt a sense of excitement coursing through me, as if I were about to embark on a journey into the past. But as the first image flickered to life on the screen, my excitement turned to unease. There, in the background of the photograph, stood a spectral figure, its form twisted and distorted as if caught between worlds. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but as I advanced to the next slide, the figure remained, its presence growing stronger with each passing frame. Terrified, I reached for another reel, hoping that the apparition was merely a fluke, a trick of the camera lens. But as I developed roll after roll of film, the same figure appeared, lurking in the shadows like a specter from a nightmare. No matter where the pictures were taken in the family home, on vacation, at weddings and birthdays, the phantom figure was there, its presence growing stronger with each roll. It seemed to be drawing closer, inching its way into the foreground of each photograph, its twisted form haunting my every waking moment. Desperate for answers, I scoured old family albums and diaries, searching for any mention of the spectral figure that had invaded our lives. But the more I searched, the more elusive the truth became, as if the phantom were toying with me, leading me down a maze of dead ends and false leads. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself consumed by paranoia, the constant presence of the phantom weighing heavily on my mind. I could feel its malevolent gaze upon me at all times, its twisted form lurking in the shadows just beyond the edge of my vision. I tried to convince myself that it was all just a figment of my imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by stress and exhaustion. But deep down, I knew that the phantom was real, that it was drawing closer with each passing day, intent on claiming me as its next subject. Desperate for relief, I sought help from experts in the paranormal, hoping that they could offer some insight into the mystery that had consumed my life. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of vengeful spirits and restless souls that roamed the earth, seeking retribution for past wrongs. With each passing day, the phantom grew stronger, its presence becoming more tangible with each roll of film I developed. I could feel it reaching out to me, its icy fingers brushing against my skin like a chill wind blowing through the darkness. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a clue that would change everything. Hidden within the attic, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found an old journal belonging to my great-grandfather. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, my heart skipped a beat as I came across a passage detailing a strange encounter he had experienced many years ago. In the entry, he spoke of a spectral figure that had haunted him for weeks, appearing in photographs and lurking in the shadows of his home. With a sinking heart, I realized that the phantom had been haunting my family for generations, its curse passed down from one generation to the next like a dark legacy. And now, it had set its sights on me, intent on claiming me as its next victim. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I set out to break the curse that had plagued my family for so long, determined to rid myself of the phantom's malevolent presence once and for all. With each passing day, I delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering ancient rituals and forbidden incantations that promised to banish the spirit back to the realm from whence it came. And then, on the darkest night of the year, as the moon hung low in the sky and the air crackled with energy, I performed the ritual, calling upon the forces of light to aid me in my quest for redemption. As the words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued my family for generations. And then, with a final burst of energy, the phantom vanished into the ether, its curse broken once and for all. As I stood alone in the darkness, the weight of the phantom's presence lifted from my shoulders. I knew that I had finally found the peace I had been searching for. And though the memory of the spectral figure would linger in the recesses of my mind, I knew that I had triumphed over the darkness that had threatened to consume me. Story 31. The forest stretched out before me like a vast, green sea, its ancient trees towering overhead and casting long shadows across the forest floor. With each step I took, the leaves rustled beneath my feet, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. It was a peaceful scene, untouched by the passage of time, and I relished the solitude as I wandered deeper into the heart of the woods. It was then, as I wandered aimlessly among the trees, that I stumbled upon it, the forgotten well hidden amidst the foliage, its crumbling stones barely visible beneath a tangle of ivy and brambles. Intrigued by this unexpected discovery, I approached cautiously, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling with unease. The well stood before me like a relic of another era, its wooden bucket long since rotted away and its stone walls worn smooth by centuries of neglect. As I peered over the edge, I could see nothing but darkness, a yawning abyss that seemed to stretch on into infinity. A chill ran down my spine as I stared into the murky depths, the sound of whispers echoing from below like the faintest echo of a forgotten memory. Instinct screamed at me to turn back, to leave this cursed place and never return, but curiosity held me fast, anchoring me to the spot, as if by some unseen force. Ignoring the warning signs, I reached out tentatively, my fingers brushing against the cool stone of the well's rim. And then, in an instant, everything changed. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees, the branches overhead creaking and groaning, as if in protest. And then, without warning, I felt something grasp hold of me, a cold, clammy hand that pulled me inexorably towards the well's gaping maw. I tried to scream, to fight against the unseen force that dragged me towards my doom, but it was no use. I was powerless against its strength. With a sickening lurch, I felt myself plummeting into the darkness, the sound of rushing water filling my ears as I fell. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the world went dark, the only sound the pounding of my own heart as I tumbled endlessly through the void. When I awoke, it was to find myself lying on the damp stone floor of a cavern, the air heavy with the scent of earth and decay. I tried to sit up to shake off the dizziness that clouded my senses, but a sharp pain in my side forced me back down, my fingers coming away slick with blood. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I could see that I was not alone. A figure stood before me, its features shrouded in shadow as if cloaked in darkness itself. I tried to speak, to ask where I was and how I had come to be here, but my voice caught in my throat, the words nothing more than a whisper lost in the echoing depths of the cavern. The figure said nothing, its gaze fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. And then, without warning, it reached out, its hand stretching towards me like a clawed talon poised to strike. I tried to scramble away, to put as much distance between myself and this unknown entity as possible. But my injured side betrayed me, sending a bolt of agony shooting through my body with each movement. I was trapped, a helpless prey in the clutches of some unseen predator. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a voice echoed through the darkness, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "Who dares to disturb the slumber of the forgotten well?" it intoned, its words reverberating off the cavern walls with an eerie resonance. I opened my mouth to respond, to beg for mercy or forgiveness or anything that might spare me from whatever fate awaited me in this desolate place. But no sound emerged, only the ragged rasp of my own breath as I struggled to draw air into my lungs. The figure drew closer, its form shifting and swirling like smoke in the darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone, leaving me alone once more in the depths of the cavern. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, the seconds stretching into minutes and the minutes into hours. And then, with a supreme effort of will, I forced myself to my feet, the pain in my side forgotten in the face of the greater danger that lurked in the shadows. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, the air heavier with the weight of centuries of forgotten secrets. And then, just when I thought I could bear it no longer, I saw the faintest glimmer of light shining in the distance like a beacon of hope in the darkness. Heart pounding, I stumbled towards it, each step a struggle against the oppressive weight of the cavern. And then, at long last, I emerged into the blinding light of day, the cool breeze of the forest washing over me like a benediction. I glanced back at the well, its gaping maw still visible amidst the foliage, and shuddered at the memory of the horrors that lay within. And then, without a backward glance, I turned and fled, vowing never to return to that cursed place for as long as I lived. Story 32. Moving into a new home is supposed to be an exciting adventure, a fresh start in a new place, full of possibilities and promise. But for me, it quickly became a nightmare, a descent into darkness and despair that I could never have imagined in my worst nightmares. The house seemed perfect at first glance, a quaint cottage nestled at the edge of a picturesque village, its ivy-covered walls and quaint shutters giving it an air of rustic charm. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, I felt a chill run down my spine, a sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. Ignoring my misgivings, I set about making the house my own, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture with a determination born of desperation. But no matter how I tried to distract myself, the feeling of unease persisted, lingering like a shadow in the corners of my mind. And then, as night fell and the world outside grew dark, the nightmares began a relentless onslaught of terror that left me trembling and drenched in sweat. Each night, I would dream of a vengeful spirit, its eyes burning with fury as it reached out to me with spectral hands, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed in the depths of my mind. At first, I tried to dismiss the dreams as nothing more than the product of an overactive imagination, a side effect of the stress of moving to a new place. But as the hauntings grew more intense, I could no longer deny the truth. There was something in that house, something malevolent and hungry for vengeance. I began to research the history of the house, hoping to uncover some clue as to the source of the haunting. And what I discovered chilled me to the bone. The previous owners had met a tragic end, their lives cut short by a series of mysterious accidents that had left the community reeling with shock and disbelief. As I delved deeper into the past, I uncovered a tale of betrayal and revenge, a story of love gone wrong and the terrible price that had been paid for past wrongs. And at the center of it all was the vengeful spirit that now haunted my dreams, its thirst for retribution driving it to seek out those it deemed responsible for its suffering. I tried to leave, to flee from the house and its dark secrets, but no matter where I went, the spirit followed, its spectral presence a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked just beyond the edge of reality. It was as if I was trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape, a prisoner of fate condemned to relive the sins of the past for all eternity. Desperate for answers, I sought out the help of experts in the paranormal, a motley crew of ghost hunters and psychics who claimed to possess the ability to communicate with the spirit world. But even they were powerless against the fury of the vengeful spirit, their rituals and incantations falling on deaf ears as the haunting grew more intense with each passing day. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, I had a breakthrough. I discovered a hidden chamber beneath the house, its walls adorned with strange symbols and arcane sigils that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. It was here, in the heart of the house, that I finally came face to face with the vengeful spirit that had tormented me for so long. Its eyes blazed with fury as it advanced towards me, its spectral form shimmering in the dim light of the chamber. But instead of cowering in fear, I stood my ground, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and defiance. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible above the sound of my own heartbeat. "I'm sorry for whatever happened to you, for whatever pain you've endured. Please, let me help you find peace." For a moment, the spirit hesitated, its eyes flickering with uncertainty. And then, to my astonishment, it began to fade, its form dissolving into mist until there was nothing left but an echo of its presence lingering in the air. And just like that, the haunting was over, the nightmares gone, the sense of unease replaced by a profound sense of relief. But as I stood there in the darkness, I couldn't help but wonder, had I truly laid the spirit to rest, or was it merely biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike once again? Only time would tell, but for now I was grateful for the respite, a chance to rebuild my life and move forward, leaving the darkness of the past behind me. Story 33. The ancient amulet had been passed down through my family for generations, a cherished heirloom said to hold great power and protection. As a child, I would marvel at its intricate design, tracing the patterns with my fingertips and imagining the adventures it had witnessed over the centuries. But as I grew older, I began to sense a darkness lurking within the amulet, a malevolent energy that seemed to pulse beneath its polished surface. Ignoring the warnings of my elders, I slipped the amulet around my neck, eager to harness the power that lay dormant within its ancient confines. At first, everything seemed normal. The amulet hung heavy around my neck, its weight a comforting reminder of the bond I shared with my ancestors. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in my behavior, as if the amulet were whispering dark secrets into the recesses of my mind. Strange thoughts filled my head, twisted and sinister urges that I could not explain. I found myself consumed by a hunger for power, a thirst for dominance that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. And though I tried to fight against the darkness that threatened to consume me, I found myself powerless to resist its seductive embrace. Desperate for relief, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of curses and ancient evils that lurked within the amulet's ancient confines, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the amulet's grip on me growing stronger, its dark energy seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear its whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its malevolent influence. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the amulet's malevolent spirit. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the ritual passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the amulet fell from my neck, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the cursed artifact lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the amulet's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least, I was free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me, free to carve my own path in the light. Story 34. The old playground had always been a place of mystery and intrigue for the children of our town. Tucked away in the corner of the park, its rusted swings and creaky seesaws stood as silent sentinels, guarding the secrets of generations past. But as children, my friends and I paid little heed to the rumors that whispered through the air, of restless spirits and tragic endings that lurked within the playground's confines. Instead, we saw it as our own little slice of adventure, a place where we could let our imaginations run wild and our dreams take flight. We would spend hours playing make-believe, chasing each other through the maze of jungle gyms and slides, our laughter echoing through the air like the ringing of bells. But as we grew older, the whispers grew louder, the stories more sinister in their telling. Tales of children who had disappeared without a trace, their laughter silenced forever by the shadows that lurked within the playground's depths. Some said they had been taken by the spirits of the dead, their restless souls doomed to wander the earth for all eternity. Despite the warnings, I couldn't shake the feeling of nostalgia that washed over me whenever I thought of the old playground. And so one fateful night, fueled by a sense of curiosity and a longing for the carefree days of my youth, I returned to the place where it all began. As I approached the playground, a chill ran down my spine, as if a cold wind had swept through the air, carrying with it the whispers of those who had come before. Ignoring the feeling of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I pushed open the rusty gate and stepped into the playground's embrace. At first, everything seemed normal. The swing swayed gently in the breeze, the seesaws creaking softly as they rocked back and forth. But as I made my way deeper into the playground, a sense of foreboding washed over me, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. And then, without warning, the swings began to move on their own, their chains rattling in protest as they swung higher and higher into the air. I watched in horror as the seats swung back and forth, as if propelled by an unseen force, the laughter of ghostly children filling the air like a haunting melody. Frozen in fear, I tried to flee, but it was as if the playground itself had come alive, its twisted metal structures blocking my escape at every turn. I could feel the eyes of the spirits upon me, their presence pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket, their whispers echoing through the darkness like a chorus of the damned. Trapped in the playground's grasp, I realized that I was not alone. The spirits of the children who had met tragic ends within its confines were all around me, their restless souls reaching out to me from the shadows, their laughter mingling with the sound of the wind as it howled through the empty swings. Desperate for escape, I called out into the darkness, praying for someone, anyone, to hear my cries and come to my aid. But my pleas fell on deaf ears, swallowed up by the silence that surrounded me like a shroud. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, a faint glimmer of light appeared in the distance, cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope in the night. With renewed determination, I pushed through the shadows, following the light, until I reached the edge of the playground's confines. As I stepped out into the open air, the darkness that had consumed me began to recede, replaced by the warm glow of the moon as it hung low in the sky. I turned back to look at the playground one last time, its twisted metal structures looming in the darkness like the specter of a nightmare. And though I knew that the memories of that fateful night would haunt me for the rest of my days, I also knew that I had survived the sinister playground, its grip on me broken by the light of truth and the strength of my own will. And as I walked away, leaving the playground's shadows behind me, I knew that I would never again be lured into its grasp, for I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Story 35. It was a night like any other, a chill wind whispering through the empty streets, the moon hanging low in the sky like a silver coin tossed upon a velvet blanket. I had been walking for hours, lost in thought and seeking solace in the solitude of the night, when I stumbled upon a deserted train, its windows dark and its doors hanging open as if beckoning me inside. At first I hesitated, my instincts warning me to stay away from this eerie apparition that seemed to materialize out of thin air, but something drew me forward, a curiosity born of desperation perhaps, or a longing for adventure in a life that had grown stagnant and dull. And so, with a mixture of trepidation and excitement, I stepped onto the platform and boarded the train, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty silence. The doors slammed shut behind me with a finality that sent a shiver down my spine, sealing me inside this strange and mysterious vessel hurtling through the darkness. As the train began to move, I felt a chill run down my spine, a coldness that seemed to seep into my bones and settle there like a heavy weight. I tried to shake off the feeling, to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but deep down I knew that something was terribly wrong. The train seemed to move of its own accord, hurtling through the night at an impossible speed. Outside, the world was a blur of shadow and light, the landscape rushing past in a dizzying whirl that left me breathless and disoriented. I stumbled through the empty carriages, searching for some sign of life in this desolate place. But all I found were empty seats and vacant stares, the remnants of passengers long gone, their spirits lingering in the air like wisps of smoke. And then, just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, I saw them, the ghosts of the passengers who had once called this train home, their eyes filled with anguish and despair as they drifted through the empty carriages in search of release. I tried to speak to them, to offer comfort in their time of need, but they paid me no mind, their spectral forms passing through me as if I were nothing more than a figment of their imagination. As I wandered through the train, I began to piece together the tragic story of its passengers, a tale of love and loss, betrayal and redemption that spanned the ages and bound them together in an eternal cycle of suffering. There was the young couple, torn apart by forces beyond their control, their love doomed to wither and die in the face of adversity. And the old man, haunted by memories of a life half-lived, his regrets weighing heavy on his soul as he searched for a way to make amends for past mistakes. But it was the child who broke my heart, a small, fragile thing with eyes that held the wisdom of centuries and a smile that spoke of innocence lost. She reached out to me with trembling hands, her voice a whisper in the darkness, as she pleaded for release from the endless torment of the train. I wanted to help her, to offer her some semblance of peace in this chaotic world, but I knew that there was nothing I could do. I was just a passenger, a transient soul passing through this haunted realm on my way to wherever fate deemed fit to take me. And so I continued on, a silent witness to the tragedies unfolding around me, my heart heavy with the weight of their suffering. As the train hurtled through the darkness, I knew that I would never forget the faces of the ghosts who haunted its carriages, their eyes filled with a longing that could never be fulfilled. And as the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, bathing the world in a warm golden glow, I stepped off the train and back into the world of the living, forever changed by my encounter with the phantom train and its lost souls. Story 36. The historic theater stood as a beacon of culture and artistry in our town, its grand marquee illuminated by the glow of neon lights that flickered in the darkness like a guiding star. As an aspiring actor, I had always dreamed of gracing the stage of the old theater, of bringing to life the characters that had captivated audiences for generations. And so, when the opportunity arose for me to audition for a production at the theater, I jumped at the chance, eager to prove myself worthy of treading the boards of such a storied venue. Little did I know, however, that my dreams would soon give way to nightmares, as the theater's haunted past began to reveal itself in terrifying ways. From the moment I set foot inside the theater, I could feel a presence watching me from the shadows, its eyes following my every move with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the feeling of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I threw myself into rehearsals, determined to make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But as the days passed and opening night drew near, strange occurrences began to plague the production. Props would go missing, only to reappear in the most unlikely of places. Lights flickered and dimmed of their own accord, casting eerie shadows across the stage like ghosts dancing in the darkness. And then, there were the voices' whispers that echoed through the halls, their words indistinct yet filled with a sense of urgency that sent chills down my spine. Desperate for answers, I turned to my fellow cast members, hoping that they could shed some light on the strange happenings that seemed to be plaguing the theater. But their responses were as cryptic as the whispers that echoed through the halls, leaving me with more questions than answers. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a dusty old book hidden away in the theater's archives that I began to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences that had been plaguing our production. The book spoke of a tragic fire that had engulfed the theater decades ago, claiming the lives of several performers and leaving the building in ruins. But it was what happened after the fire that sent a chill down my spine. According to the book, the theater had been rebuilt in the years that followed, but the spirits of those who had perished in the fire still lingered within its hallowed halls, their restless souls unable to find peace in the afterlife. As opening night approached, I realized that the theater was home to more than just memories. It was haunted by the spirits of its past performers, their presence growing stronger with each passing day. And though I tried to convince myself that it was all just a figment of my imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by stress and exhaustion, I knew deep down that the truth was far more terrifying. As the final curtain rose on opening night, I could feel the eyes of the spirits upon me, their presence pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. But instead of succumbing to fear, I drew strength from their presence, knowing that they were watching over me as I took my place on the stage. And then, as I delivered my lines and brought my character to life, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, as if the spirits were applauding from the shadows, their whispers of encouragement filling the air like a gentle breeze. In that moment, I realized that the haunted theater was not a place of darkness and despair, but a sanctuary for the souls of those who had come before, a place where their memories could live on for eternity. And as the final curtain fell and the audience erupted into applause, I knew that I had played my part in keeping the spirit of the theater alive for generations to come. Story 37. The flea market had always been a treasure trove of hidden gems, a place where one could find anything from vintage clothing to antique furniture. But it was the mask that caught my eye that fateful day, an intricate piece of craftsmanship, its twisted features carved from ancient wood and adorned with intricate designs that spoke of a bygone era. As I gazed upon the mask, I felt a strange pull, as if it were calling out to me from across the crowded marketplace. Ignoring the warnings of the vendor, who spoke of curses and dark magic, I handed over my coins and took possession of the mask, eager to add it to my collection of oddities and curiosities. At first, everything seemed normal. The mask sat silent and motionless on my mantle, its unsettling gaze fixed upon me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in my surroundings, as if the mask were exerting its influence over the world around me. Strange shadows danced across the walls at night, their twisted forms flickering in the dim light like phantoms from a nightmare. I would wake in the middle of the night to find the mask staring down at me from its perch on the mantle, its malevolent gaze following me wherever I went. Desperate for answers, I turned to experts in the occult, hoping that they could shed some light on the dark forces that seemed to be at play. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the mask's twisted form, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the mask's grip on me growing stronger, its malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear its whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its malevolent influence. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the mask's malevolent spirit. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the ritual passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the mask fell from its perch and shattered on the floor, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the shattered pieces lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the mask's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least I was free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me, free to carve my own path in the light. Story 38. The ancient grimoire lay before me, its weathered pages bound in leather and adorned with strange symbols that seemed to dance in the flickering candlelight. As I traced my fingers over the intricate designs, I felt a sense of unease wash over me, as if the book itself were alive with dark energy. Ignoring the warnings that whispered through the depths of my mind, I opened the book and began to read, my eyes scanning the pages for secrets long forgotten by the passage of time. Strange symbols filled my mind, their meaning elusive yet tantalizingly close, as if they were teasing me with the promise of forbidden knowledge. And then as I delved deeper into the book's secrets, I felt a presence watching me from the shadows, its eyes burning into my soul with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the feeling of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I pressed on, determined to uncover the truth hidden within the book's ancient pages. But as the hours turned into days and the days turned into weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in my surroundings, as if the darkness that lurked within the book's pages were seeping into the world around me. Strange whispers echoed through the halls of my mind, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its seductive embrace. Desperate for answers, I turned to experts in the occult, hoping that they could shed some light on the dark forces that seemed to be at play. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the grimoire's twisted pages, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the book's grip on me growing stronger, its malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear its whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to delve deeper into its secrets, to unlock the power that lay dormant within its ancient confines. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of the grimoire, buried beneath layers of cryptic symbols and arcane incantations, I found a warning of the darkness that lay beyond the book's pages, a realm of nightmares from which there was no escape. With trembling hands, I set out to break free from the book's grip, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the book fell from my hands and clattered to the floor, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the book lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the grimoire's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least I was free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me, free to carve my own path in the light. Story 39. The ancient sculpture had caught my eye from the moment I laid eyes on it, nestled among a collection of artifacts in the dimly lit corner of the antique shop. Its twisted form and haunting gaze seemed to beckon to me, drawing me in with an inexplicable sense of curiosity and fascination. Ignoring the warnings of the shopkeeper, who spoke of curses and dark magic that surrounded the sculpture, I handed over my coins and took possession of the ancient relic, eager to add it to my collection of oddities and curiosities. Little did I know, however, that the sculpture carried with it a darkness that would soon consume my life. At first, everything seemed normal. The sculpture sat silent and motionless on the pedestal in my home, its presence a comforting reminder of the mysteries of the past. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in my surroundings, as if the sculpture were exerting its influence over the world around me. Strange occurrences plagued my home, with objects moving on their own and whispers echoing through the halls in the dead of night. I would wake to find the sculpture in different positions, as if it had a life of its own, its twisted form seeming to shift and contort with each passing day. Desperate for answers, I turned to experts in the occult, hoping that they could shed some light on the dark forces that seemed to be at play. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the sculpture's twisted form, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the sculpture's grip on me growing stronger, its malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear its whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its malevolent influence. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the sculpture's malevolent spirit. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the sculpture crumbled to dust before my eyes, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the pile of rubble lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the sculpture's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least I was free. Free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me, free to carve my own path in the light. Story 40. The historic hotel stood as a grand monument to a bygone era, its towering facade adorned with intricate carvings and ornate balconies that spoke of a time when elegance and luxury reigned supreme. As I stepped through its ornate doors and into the opulent lobby, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, as if the very walls of the hotel were alive with unseen eyes. Ignoring the sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I approached the front desk and checked into my room, eager to experience the grandeur of the historic establishment. Little did I know, however, that my stay would soon be plagued by strange occurrences that would shake me to my core. As I settled into my room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The air seemed heavy with a sense of foreboding, and I could hear strange whispers echoing through the halls like ghosts from a distant past. Ignoring my instincts, I brushed off the feeling of unease and set out to explore the hotel's many amenities. But as the days passed, the strange occurrences only seemed to escalate. Objects would move on their own accord, sliding across tables and countertops as if guided by an unseen force. Eerie voices would echo through the halls in the dead of night, their words indistinct yet filled with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down my spine. Desperate for answers, I began to delve into the hotel's history, hoping to uncover the truth behind the strange happenings that seemed to be plaguing my stay. What I discovered, however, was far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. Buried within the hotel's archives, hidden away beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a tragic tale of murder and betrayal that had left the establishment haunted by vengeful spirits. Decades ago, it was said that a wealthy businessman had been murdered in cold blood by his own business partner, who coveted his fortune and sought to claim it for himself. The murder had sparked a scandal that rocked the town to its core, with rumors of foul play and dark magic swirling through the streets like a thick fog. And though the killer had been brought to justice and the hotel had changed hands many times over the years, the spirits of those who had perished in the tragedy still lingered within its hallowed halls, their restless souls unable to find peace in the afterlife. As I delved deeper into the hotel's history, I realized that the vengeful spirits were growing stronger with each passing day, their anger and resentment fueling the strange occurrences that seemed to plague my stay. And though I tried to convince myself that it was all just a figment of my imagination, a trick of the mind brought on by stress and exhaustion, I knew deep down that the truth was far more terrifying. With each passing night, I could feel the presence of the spirits drawing closer, their malevolent gaze fixed upon me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the feeling of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I set out to uncover the truth behind the hotel's tragic history, determined to put an end to the spirit's reign of terror once and for all. But as I delved deeper into the darkness that lurked within the hotel's walls, I realized that I had become entangled in a web of deceit and betrayal that stretched back decades. And though I tried to fight against the darkness that threatened to consume me, I found myself powerless to resist its seductive embrace. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of the hotel's archives, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound the vengeful spirits to the hotel's haunted halls. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued the hotel for so long. As the vengeful spirits faded into the darkness, their anguished cries echoing through the halls one last time, I knew that I had finally freed the hotel from the curse that had held it captive for so many years. And though the memory of my harrowing ordeal would haunt me for the rest of my days, I knew that I had done what was right, bringing peace to the souls of those who had perished in tragedy and ensuring that the historic hotel would once again be a place of beauty and elegance, but free from the shadows of its haunted past. Story 41. The allure of forgotten places had always captivated me, drawn me to their mysterious depths. That day, it was an old abandoned mine on the outskirts of town that caught my attention. Local legend had it that the mine was cursed, that all who ventured too deep never returned. I scoffed at such tales. They were mere stories concocted to keep the curious away. Armed with a flashlight and an unwavering sense of adventure, I set out to uncover the truth hidden within the mine's dark corridors. The entrance to the mine was a gaping maw in the side of a hill, its edges jagged and unwelcoming. As I passed under the time-worn wooden archway that marked its entrance, A cold breeze whispered past me, as if the mine itself was breathing. A shiver danced down my spine, not from the chill, but from the undeniable sensation of crossing a threshold into another world. Inside, the air was damp and heavy with the scent of earth and long-forgotten memories. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, scattering shadows into the corners of the tunnel. The ground beneath my feet was littered with debris, broken timbers, rusted tools, and fragments of rock that crunched softly as I walked. As I ventured deeper, the silence of the mine seemed to press against my ears. It was then that I first heard the noises, soft at first, like whispers in the distance. I stopped, straining to listen. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, yet I could not make out the words. They seemed to be calling to me, beckoning me further into the depths. The tunnel branched off in several directions. I chose a path at random, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The further I walked, the louder and more numerous the whispers became. Every so often I thought I heard footsteps echoing my own, a sound of something dragging along the ground. I spun around several times, my flashlight slicing through the darkness, but there was nothing. Only the empty path behind me and the oppressive blackness ahead. My heart began to race, not with fear, but with the thrill of the unknown. The air grew colder, and my breath formed clouds of mist that floated lazily before dissipating in the air. Then, amidst the symphony of whispers and echoes, I heard a new sound, a low, guttural moan that reverberated through the tunnel. It was a sound of pain, of deep, unending sorrow. I should have turned back then, should have heeded the primal part of my brain screaming at me to flee. But the mystery was too intoxicating, the secret of the mine too alluring. I pressed on, following the sounds that seemed to guide me. The tunnel opened up into a large cavern. The ceiling was lost above in the darkness, and my flashlight seemed feeble in the vast space. It was here that the full chorus of whispers enveloped me, voices so clear now that I could almost understand them. They spoke of lost souls, of lives cut tragically short, of a darkness that consumed all who dwelled too long in its presence. In the center of the cavern, a small pool of water reflected the feeble light of my flashlight. As I approached, the water began to ripple, as if disturbed by a breeze. Yet the air was still. I watched, frozen, as the surface of the water broke and a hand emerged, pale and reaching upward. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The hand was followed by another, then another, each reaching out from the pool as if seeking salvation. The moaning grew louder, a cacophony of despair that filled the cavern. It was then that I saw its shadowy figures moving in the darkness, circling the pool, their movements slow and deliberate. They were the source of the whispers, the bearers of the mine's curse. Their eyes were hollow, their faces gaunt, expressions of eternal anguish etched into their features. Panic set in, a primal urge to escape the horrors unfolding before me. I turned and ran, the moans and whispers chasing me as I fled back through the tunnels. The path seemed longer, more treacherous than before. Several times I fell, scraping my hands and knees, my flashlight flickering dangerously. Finally, I saw the light of day, a faint glimmer at the end of the tunnel. I burst out of the mine's entrance, gasping for air, the sunlight harsh against my eyes. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, the whispers still echoing in my ears. The images of the reaching hands burned into my vision. I drove away as fast as I could, vowing never to return, to leave the mine and its cursed inhabitants to their eternal darkness. Yet even now, when the night is still and the wind whispers through the trees, I hear their voices calling, reminding me of the horrors that lurk in forgotten places, waiting in the shadows. Story 42. The old record had been tucked away in the dusty attic of my grandmother's house for as long as I could remember. its faded cover depicting a hauntingly beautiful scene of a moonlit forest shrouded in mist. Intrigued by its mysterious allure, I decided to dust off the record player and give it a listen, unaware of the darkness that lurked within its grooves. As the needle touched down and the first notes filled the room, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if a shadow had descended upon me, enveloping me in its icy embrace. The music was unlike anything I had ever heard before, its haunting melody weaving its way into the very fabric of my being, stirring feelings of unease and apprehension deep within my soul. Ignoring the sense of foreboding that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I allowed myself to be swept away by the music's hypnotic rhythm, losing myself in its dark and twisted melodies. But as the minutes turned into hours, I began to notice subtle changes in my surroundings, as if the music were exerting its influence over the world around me. Strange thoughts filled my head, twisted and sinister urges that I could not explain. I found myself growing more distant from those around me, consumed by a hunger for power and control that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. And though I tried to fight against the darkness that threatened to consume me, I found myself powerless to resist its seductive embrace. Desperate for relief, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the record's twisted melodies, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the music's grip on me growing stronger, its malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear its whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to its malevolent influence. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the music's malevolent spirit. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the music faded into silence, its ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the record lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the music's curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least I was free. Free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me. Free to carve my own path in the light. Story 43. The secluded cabin nestled deep in the heart of the forest had seemed like the perfect getaway, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life, to reconnect with nature and unwind in peace. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on the first night of our retreat, casting long shadows across the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The cabin itself was quaint, its log walls weathered by years of exposure to the elements. Inside, a cozy fireplace crackled with warmth, casting a soft glow that danced across the wooden floors. We had brought enough provisions to last the weekend, a stockpile of food and drink, board games to while away the hours, and a sense of anticipation for the adventures that awaited us in the wilderness. Yet, as the night wore on, a sense of unease settled over us like a heavy blanket. It started with small things creaking floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside the windows, but soon escalated into something far more sinister. Strange symbols began to appear etched into the walls, their meaning lost to us, their presence unsettling. At first, we dismissed them as nothing more than a quirk of the old cabin, a remnant of its mysterious past. But as the symbols multiplied, spreading like a virus across the walls, we couldn't ignore the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were following our every move. Then came the whispers, soft, barely audible at first, like the distant murmur of a breeze through the trees. We told ourselves it was just the wind, or our imaginations playing tricks on us, but deep down, we knew it was something more. The whispers seemed to come from all around us, surrounding the cabin like a malevolent presence, their words unintelligible yet filled with malice. Each night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if demanding to be heard. We tried to drown them out with music, with conversation, with anything to distract ourselves from their eerie cadence, but they persisted, growing ever closer, ever more menacing. And then came the claw marks, the unmistakable evidence of something scratching at the door in the dead of night. At first, we tried to convince ourselves it was just a stray animal, drawn by the scent of our food or the warmth of the fire. But as the scratches grew deeper, more pronounced, we knew it was something far more sinister. Trapped in the cabin with no way to escape, we huddled together, our hearts pounding in our chests, our minds racing with fear and uncertainty. We debated calling for help, but the nearest town was miles away, and the phone lines were dead. We were alone, at the mercy of whatever lurked in the darkness outside. As the days stretched into weeks, our sense of isolation grew, our sanity fraying at the edges. We took turns standing watch, keeping vigil through the long, sleepless nights, our nerves on edge, our senses heightened to the slightest sound or movement. And then, one fateful night, it happened. The whispers stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to echo through the cabin like a death knell. We knew then that whatever had been stalking us in the darkness was no longer content to stay outside. It wanted in, wanted us, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. As we barricaded the doors and windows, our minds racing with terror, we knew that our time was running out. We had stumbled into something beyond our comprehension, something ancient and malevolent that had been waiting for us, biding its time in the depths of the forest until we were ripe for the taking. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor, we knew that our fate was sealed. The cursed cabin had claimed us as its own, and there was no escape from the horrors that lurked in the surrounding forest. Story 44. The mirror in my bedroom had always been a source of comfort and familiarity, its polished surface reflecting the warm glow of the afternoon sun as it filtered through the curtains. But as of late, that once familiar reflection had taken on a sinister quality, one that sent shivers down my spine every time I dared to look into its depths. It started innocently enough, with just a fleeting glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. At first I dismissed it as a trick of the light or my overactive imagination playing tricks on me. But as the days passed, the glimpses became more frequent, more tangible, until I could no longer deny the truth staring back at me from the mirror. Every time I looked into its depths, there was a ghostly figure standing just behind me, its form hazy and indistinct yet undeniably menacing. Its eyes, filled with a cold malice that seemed to pierce through to the very core of my being, bore into me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. No matter how many times I blinked or turned away, the figure remained, lurking just beyond my reflection like a shadow in the night. Terrified and desperate for answers, I turned to anyone who would listen, hoping that someone could shed light on the mysterious apparition that haunted my every waking moment. But each person I spoke to offered little in the way of comfort or explanation, dismissing my fears as mere figments of my imagination or the result of stress and fatigue. They urged me to ignore the ghostly reflection and carry on with my life as if nothing were amiss, but try as I might, I could not shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the history of the mirror, scouring ancient texts and obscure archives in search of any clue that might explain the ghostly figure that haunted its depths. What I discovered, however, only served to deepen the mystery and fill me with a sense of dread, unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Buried within the annals of time, hidden away beneath layers of dust and debris, I found mention of a legend that spoke of a cursed mirror said to be a harbinger of impending doom. According to the ancient texts, anyone who looked into its depths would be confronted by the ghostly reflection of their own mortality, a grim reminder of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. But as I read on, I realized that the legend went even further, speaking of a dark and malevolent force that lurked within the mirror's depths, feeding off the fear and despair of those who dared to gaze into its abyss. It was said that this force, this harbinger of doom, would appear to those whose time on this earth was drawing to a close, a spectral omen of the darkness that awaited them in the afterlife. Terrified by what I had uncovered, I knew that I could not ignore the ghostly reflection any longer. I had to confront it, to face whatever dark fate awaited me head-on, if only to find some semblance of peace in the midst of the chaos that had consumed my life. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with fear, I approached the mirror once more, steeling myself for whatever horrors lay in store. As I looked into its depths, I felt a chill run down my spine, for there was the ghostly figure standing just behind me, its eyes filled with malice and its form wreathed in shadow. But this time, instead of turning away in fear, I met its gaze head-on, refusing to cower in the face of the darkness that threatened to consume me. And as I did, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders and I was finally free from the grip of fear that had held me captive for so long. And then, in an instant, the ghostly figure vanished, its malevolent presence dissipating into the ether like smoke in the wind. As I stood there, staring into the mirror's depths, I knew that I had conquered my fears, that I had faced the darkness that had haunted me for so long and emerged victorious. Though the memory of the ghostly reflection would linger in the back of my mind for the rest of my days, I knew that I had overcome it, that I had refused to let fear dictate the course of my life. And as I turned away from the mirror, a newfound sense of strength and resilience filled me, guiding me forward into an uncertain future with courage and determination. Story 45. The old mansion had been in my family for generations, its imposing facade standing as a testament to the wealth and prestige that had once been synonymous with our name. As the sole heir to the estate, I had inherited the mansion upon the passing of my parents, eager to explore its hidden secrets and uncover the mysteries that lay within its walls. Little did I know, however, that the mansion held secrets far darker and more sinister than I could have ever imagined. It was during one of my many explorations of the estate that I stumbled upon the hidden room, tucked away behind a false wall in the depths of the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. Intrigued by the discovery, I cautiously made my way inside, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. What I found inside took my breath away, a treasure trove of cursed artifacts, each one more ominous than the last. Ancient statues adorned with symbols of dark magic, intricately carved masks with eyes that seemed to follow me wherever I went, and dusty tomes filled with forbidden knowledge that spoke of unspeakable horrors lurking just beyond the veil of reality. As I gazed upon the cursed objects, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if a cold hand had reached out from the shadows and wrapped its icy fingers around my heart. I could sense the dark power emanating from the artifacts, a malevolent force that seemed to pulse with a life of its own, beckoning to me with promises of untold riches and forbidden pleasures. Ignoring the warning signs that whispered through the depths of my mind, I reached out and touched one of the cursed objects, its smooth surface sending shivers down my spine as I felt its dark energy seeping into my soul. In that moment, I knew that I had made a grave mistake, for the cursed artifacts had claimed me as their own, binding me to their malevolent influence with chains forged from the darkest depths of the abyss. As days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, I found myself consumed by the cursed objects, their influence seeping into every aspect of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. Strange occurrences plagued the mansion, with objects moving on their own and eerie whispers echoing through the halls in the dead of night. Desperate to rid myself of the cursed artifacts and break free from their grip, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the artifacts, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the cursed objects' grip on me growing stronger, their malevolent presence seeping into every corner of my life like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear their whispers echoing through the darkness, urging me to embrace the darkness within, to surrender myself to their malevolent influence. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the cursed artifact's malevolent spirits. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the darkness that had plagued me for so long. As the cursed artifacts crumbled to dust before my eyes, their ancient power broken once and for all, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the pile of rubble lying at my feet, I knew that their darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in their web of malevolence. And though I had escaped their grasp, I knew that the memory of their curse would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least, I was free. Free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me. Free to carve my own path in the light. Story 46. It was supposed to be a simple hike through the old forest trail, a way to clear my mind and enjoy the solitude that only nature could offer. The map I clutched was old, perhaps outdated, which might explain how I found myself standing at the edge of a clearing I couldn't remember ever hearing about. Before me lay an ancient cemetery, its existence seemingly swallowed by the encroaching forest and erased from collective memory. The gate, if one could still call it that, was little more than rusted iron twisted by time, hanging precariously off its hinges. As I pushed it open, the metal groaned a protest so loud I half expected the dead to answer. The path was choked with weeds and wildflowers grew rampant, their colors stark against the muted grays and browns of weathered tombstones. I wandered among the graves, drawn by a mix of awe and an unsettling curiosity. The names on the tombstones were barely legible, eroded by the relentless passage of time, but the dates were clear enough, none later than the mid-1800s. This was a place of rest for souls long forgotten by the world beyond the woods.
The air grew colder as I delved deeper into the cemetery. A wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a chill that seemed to seep into my bones. It was then that I felt an undeniable sense of being watched. I spun around, half expecting to confront someone, but I was utterly alone. Or so it seemed. The sensation of invisible eyes boring into my back was intense, and with it came a palpable wave of anger and resentment.
I tried to shake off the feeling, attributing it to the eerie setting in my overactive imagination. Yet, as I made to leave, a soft moan stopped me in my tracks. The sound was mournful, and it echoed through the clearing like a sorrowful lament. The ground beneath my feet trembled slightly, and I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. As I watched in horror, the earth around one of the graves began to shift. Soil and leaves stirred, as if caught in a silent storm, and slowly, almost reluctantly, a spectral figure rose from the ground. It was a woman, her form translucent and shimmering in the dim light. Her face was twisted in anguish, and her eyes, those eyes burned with an ethereal fire. I stumbled back, my mind reeling as more graves began to give up their dead. Spectral figures, each bound to the shadowy silhouette of the tombstones from which they emerged, rose into the air. They were dressed in the tattered remnants of what might once have been funeral finery, their expressions carved from nightmares and despair. "Help us," the whisper came from all around, a chorus of the damned that filled the clearing. Just as another voice moaned, the words stretched into a nearly endless echo.
I understood then that these spirits had been wronged, forgotten by a world that moved on without them. This ancient cemetery was their prison, and they were bound to it by chains of neglect and injustice.
"What do you need?" I found myself asking, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and compassion. "Remember us," the woman who had first appeared pleaded. "Tell our stories. Bring justice to our names." I nodded, unsure of how to fulfill such a request, but driven by a desire to help these lost souls find some semblance of peace. I reached for my backpack, pulling out the camera I always carried with me. With a steadying breath, I began to photograph each tombstone, each spectral figure, capturing their images as they hovered near their earthly ties. As I worked, the spirits watched, their expressions gradually shifting from anger and sorrow to something resembling hope. When I had documented each visible grave, the woman who had first appeared nodded to me, a gesture filled with gratitude and immense sadness. "You have seen us," she said, her voice fading like the last whisper of wind. "Do not let the world forget again." With that, the spirits began to dissolve, their forms becoming part of the mist that had begun to rise with the approaching dawn. One by one, they disappeared, leaving me alone in the clearing with the rising sun painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. I left the cemetery as the world around me woke, the haunting encounter seared into my memory. Once home, I researched the names I had captured, slowly uncovering the stories of the people who had been buried in that forgotten plot of land. Each story was a piece of history, a tale of life and death that had once been lost but now was found. I published my findings, ensuring that the names and stories of those forgotten souls were remembered once more. Justice in the truest sense might have been beyond my reach, but I had given them a voice, and in doing so, I hoped I had granted them some peace. Returning to the trail that led away from the cemetery, I looked back once more, the image of the spectral figures etched forever in my mind. The cemetery was quiet now, a sacred place of remembrance rather than a prison of despair. And as I walked away, the whisper of the wind seemed to carry a note of thanks, a sigh of release from those who had been lost but were now, finally, remembered. Story 47. The historic cemetery was shrouded in an eerie silence as I stepped through its wrought iron gates, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. I had always been drawn to places of history and mystery, and the old graveyard held a particular fascination for me, its weather-worn headstones and crumbling mausoleums serving as silent sentinels to the souls that lay beneath. As I wandered among the rows of graves, my eyes were drawn to a statue standing alone in a secluded corner of the cemetery. It was a stone angel, its wings spread wide as if in flight, its cold stone eyes fixed upon me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. There was something about the statue that seemed to emanate a sinister aura, a darkness that lurked just beneath its serene facade. Ignoring the sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of my mind, I approached the statue, drawn by an irresistible curiosity to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its cold, stone form. As I drew closer, I could hear whispers emanating from its lips, faint and indistinct at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But as I stepped closer, the whispers grew louder, their words twisting and distorting as if spoken by 1,000 voices all at once. I strained to make out their meaning, to decipher the secrets that the statue held within its ancient stone, but the words were elusive, slipping through my grasp like water through clenched fingers. Desperate for answers, I reached out and touched the statue's cold, stone surface, my fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorned its form. And then, in an instant, the whispers grew louder, their words echoing through the darkness like a chorus of lost souls crying out for release. I listened intently, my heart pounding in my chest as the whispers revealed secrets of the past that should have remained buried, tales of love and betrayal, of tragedy and loss, of souls bound to the earth by the weight of their unfinished business. And as I listened, I realized that this statue was more than just a monument to the dead. It was a vessel for the restless spirits that wandered the graveyard, their voices crying out for justice from beyond the grave. Terrified by what I had uncovered, I stumbled back from the statue, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I struggled to make sense of the darkness that surrounded me. But try as I might, I could not escape the whispers that echoed through the cemetery, their words haunting me like a ghostly refrain. With trembling hands, I turned and fled from the graveyard, the echoes of the whispers following me like a shadow as I made my way back to the safety of my home. But even there, in the warmth and comfort of familiar surroundings, I could still hear the faint echoes of the whispers, their words a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edges of my reality. Days turned into weeks, and still the whispers haunted me, their voices growing louder and more insistent with each passing day. I tried to drown them out with music and distractions, but their relentless presence weighed heavily on my mind, a constant reminder of the secrets that the statue had revealed to me in the graveyard. Desperate for relief, I sought help from those who claimed to possess knowledge of the supernatural, hoping that they could offer some explanation for the whispers that plagued me. But their words offered little comfort, for they spoke of ancient curses and forbidden rituals that lurked within the statue's stone form, waiting to ensnare unsuspecting souls in their web of darkness. With each passing day, I could feel the whispers growing stronger, their voices seeping into every corner of my mind like a poison spreading through my veins. I could hear them in my dreams, their words twisting and distorting as they whispered tales of doom and despair. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a revelation that would change everything. Hidden within the depths of an ancient tome, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, I found a ritual that promised to break the curse that bound me to the statue's malevolent spirits. With trembling hands, I set out to perform the ritual, knowing that failure would mean certain doom. With each step I took, the darkness seemed to close in around me, threatening to swallow me whole. But I pressed on, fueled by a sense of determination born from desperation. And then, as the final words of the incantation passed my lips, I felt a surge of power coursing through me, banishing the whispers that had plagued me for so long. As the echoes of the whispers faded into the darkness, their malevolent presence dissipating into the ether like smoke in the wind, I knew that I had finally found the freedom I had so desperately sought. But as I looked down at the statue lying at my feet, I knew that its darkness would linger in the shadows, waiting to ensnare another unsuspecting victim in its web of malevolence. And though I had escaped its grasp, I knew that the memory of the whispers would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the unknown. But for now, at least I was free. Free to live my life without the shadow of darkness looming over me, free to carve my own path in the light. Story 48. The quaint bookstore tucked away in the corner of an overlooked street had always been a treasure trove of rare finds. Its shelves were laden with books of every conceivable genre and age, each with its own story to tell. That day, as the autumn rain drummed steadily against the cobblestone, I wandered inside, seeking refuge in perhaps a rare book to add to my collection. Little did I know that among the dusty shelves lay a tome that would forever alter the course of my life. It was the spine of the book that first caught my eye, an ancient leather binding with intricate designs that seemed to pulse with an unseen life. The book was wedged between mundane titles of history and literature, its presence almost commanding. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, I reached out and took the volume into my hands, feeling an immediate chill spread through my fingers to my core. The shopkeeper, a wizened old man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, glanced up from his desk and gave me a knowing look. "Ah, that one," he murmured, his voice a mix of caution and curiosity. "It's been here longer than I have." Rare, very rare, and peculiar. Peculiar, how I asked, my interest piqued. People tend to say it changes them. But you know, old books, old stories, they can do that, he replied cryptically. Undeterred, I purchased the manuscript. The shopkeeper wrapped it in a brown paper with a hesitance that should have warned me of the gravity of what I was taking home. But at that moment, all I felt was the thrill of acquisition. Back at my study, the rain still tapping at the windows, I unwrapped the manuscript with a reverence reserved for the most sacred relics. The cover was cool to the touch, the leather dark and supple, embossed with symbols that I couldn't quite understand. They seemed to shift and move under my gaze like living things. Opening the book, I found the pages yellowed with age, filled with dense script that flowed like dark ink rivers across the parchment. The language was unfamiliar, arcane, and as I began to read, the words seemed to writhe and twist as if they were alive. The more I read, the more the room around me seemed to darken, the shadows growing deeper, the light dimmer. Night after night, I found myself drawn to the manuscript, each session leaving me more drained than the last. I began to see the words in my dreams, heard their whispers in the silent hours of the night. They spoke of forgotten rituals, ancient powers, and cosmic horrors lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The more I delved into the manuscript, the more I felt it delving into me, its dark tendrils wrapping around my very soul. It wasn't long before the effects began to manifest in more tangible ways. Objects in my home seemed to move on their own, disappearing and reappearing in impossible places. The air would sometimes grow thick, charged with a static energy that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Shadows in the corners of my eyes darted away when I tried to look directly at them, and at times I could swear the walls were breathing. Concerned for my well-being, friends and family urged me to step away from my research into the manuscript. They said I was changing, growing more withdrawn, more obsessed. But how could I explain that it was not mere obsession? It was a compulsion, a need instilled in me by the manuscript itself. As I translated more of the text, using old tomes and forgotten languages, I began to uncover references to a ritual, one that promised to unleash the manuscript's full power. It spoke of a gatekeeper of knowledge, a being that existed between the layers of our reality, holding the keys to infinite wisdom and infinite madness. Driven by a mixture of fear and desire, I began to prepare for the ritual. The manuscript provided detailed instructions, the alignment of the stars, the arrangement of ancient symbols, the precise words to be spoken at the stroke of midnight. On the night of the ritual, the air was electric, the sky a tapestry of brooding clouds lit intermittently by flashes of lightning. As I began to chant the words, the symbols on the manuscript glowed with a fierce, unholy light. The ground beneath my feet trembled, and a wind whipped around the room, tearing books from shelves and extinguishing candles. Then, silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears with the weight of a tomb. And from that silence emerged a voice deep and resonant, filling the room, filling my mind. It offered me secrets of the universe, knowledge beyond human comprehension, but at a cost that involved my very essence. I stood at the threshold of a decision that could either elevate me to realms of untold power or pull me into an abyss from which there was no return. The temptation was immense, but in that moment of clarity I saw the manuscript for what it truly was: a prison, a trap set by a malevolent force using forbidden knowledge as its bait. With every ounce of strength I had left, I closed the book, breaking the chant and the connection. The wind died down, the glowing symbols faded, and the oppressive presence receded. I was left alone in my ravaged study, the manuscript innocuous once more, its cover closed like the eyes of a dreaming demon. In the days that followed, I disposed of the manuscript, entrusting it to the depths of the ocean where it could tempt no one else. The whispers faded, the shadows receded, but the knowledge of what I had encountered remained, a stark reminder of the thin line between curiosity and folly, between seeking knowledge and being consumed by it. Story 49. The day I moved into my new house was bright and sunny, the air filled with the promise of new beginnings. The house, nestled at the end of a quiet street, seemed to beckon to me with its charm and character. But as I began to unpack my belongings and settle into my new surroundings, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about the place. It wasn't until a few days later, while exploring the nooks and crannies of the house, that I stumbled upon a door tucked away in a corner of the hallway, its wooden surface weathered and worn with age. I tried the handle, but it was locked tight, the key nowhere to be found. Curiosity piqued. I made inquiries with the real estate agent, but she seemed genuinely surprised by the existence of the locked room, insisting that it had never been mentioned by the previous owner. Undeterred, I set about finding a way to unlock the mystery that lay beyond that door. After scouring the house from top to bottom, I finally unearthed an old key hidden away in the back of a forgotten drawer. With trembling hands, I inserted the key into the lock and turned it, the sound of tumblers falling into place echoing through the hallway. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a small room bathed in shadows. As I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine, the air heavy with the weight of years gone by. But it was what adorned the walls that truly sent a shiver racing down my spine. Covering every inch of the room were scratched markings, etched into the surface of the plaster with meticulous precision. Each marking was accompanied by a date, ranging from decades ago to just a few weeks prior. Some were deep gouges, as if made with desperate fervor, while others were lighter, almost hesitant in their execution. I stood there, transfixed by the sight before me, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. Who had made these markings? And why? What secrets did they hold, hidden away in the darkness of this forgotten room? With trembling hands, I reached out to touch one of the markings, my fingertips tracing its uneven surface. It felt as if I were touching history itself, the weight of all those years pressing down on me like a heavy burden. As I studied the markings, I began to notice a pattern emerging. Some dates were circled, while others were crossed out entirely. It was as if whoever had made them was keeping track of something, marking the passage of time in a way that felt both methodical and deeply unsettling. Unable to resist the pull of the mystery before me, I retrieved a flashlight from my pocket and began to examine the markings more closely. And that's when I saw it hidden among the scratches was a series of faint lines, forming a crude but unmistakable map. My heart pounding with excitement, I followed the lines with the beam of my flashlight, tracing their path across the wall until they led me to a spot near the floorboards. With bated breath, I dropped to my knees and began to pry at the loose floorboard, my fingers trembling with anticipation. Finally, with a creak of protest, the floorboard gave way, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside, nestled among layers of dust and cobwebs, was a small wooden box. I reached out to open it, my hands shaking with excitement and fear. Inside the box, I found a collection of old photographs, yellowed with age but still vibrant with life. There were pictures of a family, smiling and laughing in moments frozen in time. But as I sifted through the photographs, I noticed something unsettling in each one. There was a figure lurking in the background, their face obscured by shadows. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that the figure was always the same, a dark specter haunting the edges of each photograph. And then it hit me, the markings on the wall, the hidden compartment, the photographs, they were all connected, pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. As I continued to sift through the contents of the box, I found a letter tucked away among the photographs. It was addressed to the previous owner of the house, written in a shaky hand that seemed to tremble with fear. In the letter, the writer spoke of a presence that had haunted the house for generations, a malevolent force that fed on the souls of those who dared to inhabit its walls. They spoke of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena, of whispers in the night and shadows that moved of their own accord. But most chilling of all was the final passage, in which the writer confessed to their own descent into madness, driven to the brink by the relentless torment of the entity that dwelled within the house. And as I read those words, I couldn't help but wonder, was the figure in the photographs the same entity that had driven the previous owner to madness? And if so, what did it want from me? With a sense of unease settling over me, I carefully replaced the photographs and the letter in the box, sealing it shut once more. And as I emerged from the hidden room, the weight of its secrets heavy on my shoulders, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone, that somewhere, in the shadows of the empty house, the dark presence that had haunted it for so long was watching, waiting for its next victim. Story 50. The sensation of being watched had haunted me for weeks, an unshakable presence that lurked just beyond the edge of my awareness. Every night, as darkness descended and the world grew still, I would feel its gaze upon me, like the weight of unseen eyes boring into the very core of my being. At first, I dismissed it as nothing more than a trick of the mind, a byproduct of the isolation that comes with living alone in a big city. But as the nights wore on, the feeling only grew stronger, its tendrils wrapping themselves around me like a suffocating blanket. I tried to rationalize the sensation, attributing it to stress or fatigue, but deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play. It was as if the darkness itself had taken on a life of its own, a malevolent force that watched and waited with infinite patience. And then, one evening, as I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, I saw a fleeting glimpse of movement reflected in the window glass. My heart leaped into my throat as I turned to face the source of the disturbance, but there was nothing there, only the empty expanse of my room stretching out before me. I blinked in disbelief, my mind struggling to make sense of what I had just seen. Had it been a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination? Or was there truly something or someone lurking just beyond the threshold of my perception? With a sense of trepidation, I approached the window, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the room. Outside, the city lay shrouded in darkness, its streets empty and silent. There was no sign of movement, no indication that anyone or anything was watching me from the shadows. But as I peered out into the night, a chill ran down my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was as if the very air itself had come alive with a sense of foreboding, a premonition of danger lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. I forced myself to look away, to tear my gaze from the window and focus on the mundane tasks that lay before me. But no matter how hard I tried to shake the feeling of being watched, it clung to me like a shadow, a constant presence that refused to be ignored. Night after night, the sensation persisted, growing stronger with each passing hour. I would lie awake in bed, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for the inevitable moment when I would feel its gaze upon me once more. And then, one fateful evening, as I sat alone in my darkened apartment, I saw it again, the reflection of a figure standing just outside the window, its features obscured by the cloak of night. My breath caught in my throat as I turned to face the source of the reflection, but once again, there was nothing there, only the empty expanse of my room bathed in darkness. With a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins, I leaped to my feet and flung open the window, expecting to find the intruder lurking just beyond the threshold. But the night air was empty, devoid of any trace of the figure that had haunted my dreams. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, the cold night air sending shivers down my spine. And then from the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement, a shadow darting across the rooftops, disappearing into the inky blackness of the night. Without a second thought, I gave chase, propelled by a sense of urgency that bordered on desperation. I raced through the empty streets, my footsteps echoing in the silence of the night, the figure always just out of reach. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a lingering sense of dread that hung heavy in the night air. As I stood there, alone in the darkness, I realized that the Watcher was not some malevolent entity lurking in the shadows, but a manifestation of my own fears and insecurities, a reflection of the darkness that lurked within my own soul. With that realization, the sensation of being watched began to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of clarity and resolve. I turned away from the empty streets and made my way back to my apartment, the weight of the night lifting from my shoulders with each step. And as I closed the window behind me and settled into bed, I knew that the Watcher would never haunt me again, for I had faced my fears and emerged stronger for it. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that no matter what darkness may come, I would always be able to find the light within myself to guide me through.